Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dan Garodnick, Chair of the City Planning Commission and Director of the Department of City Planning. Welcome to today's review session and special public meeting of the City Planning Commission. We're joined today by Vice Chair Knuckles, Commissioners Benjamin, Cerullo, Crowell on Zoom, Dweck, Commissioner Gold, Kermani, Osorio, and Rampersad. Thank you all very much for being here. Before we get to today's agenda, I just want to share some recent city planning related news. First of all, I'm happy to report that we're seeing results from our Soho NoHo neighborhood plan. Approved in 2021, it was a step toward fair housing, opening two of New York City's most high demand neighborhoods to new housing for the first time in decades. Latest tally shows around 580 homes in the works, with nearly 200 of them income-restricted affordable. That means hundreds of low and moderate-income households will be able to live in one of the most amenity-filled, transit-accessible, culturally vibrant hubs of our city. Importantly, this is just the start. We expect much more in Soho NoHo in the years to come. So let's get to our meeting today. Since we don't have any public hearings scheduled this week, we are moving the rest of what would have been Wednesday's items to a special public meeting on today's agenda. So we're going to start with a review session to discuss upcoming votes. We're going to then conduct those votes during a public meeting, and we're going to switch back to a review session for a special presentation, some new projects and discussions on projects that have already had their public hearings. Okay, everybody got that? For today's votes, we're going to start with a commercial and industrial development at 20 Berry Street in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. Located near McCarran Park, the building would create over 700 new jobs and include nearly 10,000 square feet of new publicly accessible open space. We'll next vote on a text amendment to facilitate private cafe use by La Grande Boucherie within the through-block Galleria Pops at 1325 Avenue of the Americas in Midtown Manhattan. We'll also vote on a modification of a previously approved CPC certification to facilitate design upgrades to the same Galleria. From there, we will vote on a proposal by the Department of Environmental Protection and the Department of Citywide Administrative Services to construct disinfection facilities for combined sewer overflows in Flushing Creek, Queens. The project includes a site selection and acquisition of private property and a state-owned triangular traffic median between College Point Boulevard, 32nd Avenue, and the Whitestone Expressway, as well as a demapping of the traffic median. It will help to significantly improve water quality in Flushing Creek, an important waterway that sits between the neighborhoods of Corona and Flushing. Next, we'll head to Staten Island for a vote on the Arden Heights Woods Stream restoration, an application from the New York City Departments of Environmental Protection, Design and Construction, and Citywide Administrative Services. This would establish easements through two privately owned lots and purchase another privately owned lot to allow for the enhancement of stormwater management and restoration of the local stream banks. Staying on Staten Island, we'll vote on a special hillsides preservation district authorization to facilitate the reconstruction of Skyline Playground in New Brighton. After our votes, we're going to reopen the review session with a special presentation by the Department of Design and Construction, Tudor Perini ONG Construction, and architectural firm HOK on the design of the Manhattan Borough-based jail. For projects starting public review, we'll begin with an application from DOT that would allow them to contract with the Flatiron Nomad Partnership for revenue-generating concessions along Broadway from East 19th to West 31st Street in Manhattan. These funds would be dedicated to maintaining public space throughout the Flatiron District. From there, we will look at a mixed-use building at 4703 108th Street in Corona, Queens. This development would create nearly 120 new homes, of which 30 would be income-restricted affordable, as well as ground floor retail and a public indoor soccer field. The site is next to the Q23 bus stop and 1 block from the New York Hall of Science. Notably, this proposal made use of Green Fast Track, which provides a more streamlined environmental review process for small and medium-sized climate-friendly developments, and I'm very glad to see more and more qualifying projects using this important tool to get homes built for New Yorkers at a faster pace. Staying in Queens, We're going to next learn about our proposed walk to a park site selection in Community District 2, which includes the neighborhoods of Long Island City, Sunnyside, Woodside, Blissville, and West Maspa. This application by the New York City Department of Parks and Department of Citywide Administrative Services would enable the selection and acquisition of privately owned properties in the area for future park development. It's part of an ongoing city initiative to help ensure more New Yorkers live near public parks and closing the so-called walk to a park gap. Finally, off to Brooklyn for the renewal of a previously approved special permit that would facilitate a mixed-use development with between 120 and 140 new homes, 35 income-restricted affordable, along with community facility space. Located at 130 St. Felix Street in Fort Greene, the building would be adjacent to the Atlantic Avenue Barclay Center Transit Hub, which includes the 2, 3, 4, 5 BDNQR trains and the Long Island Railroad. It would also be close to the Barclay Center, Brooklyn Academy of Music, Betty Carter Park, and Fort Greene Park. So, with that, Madam Secretary, I turn it to you, and also, if you wouldn't mind, please let us know which commissioners are presently on Zoom.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the City Planning Commission review session for Monday, February 2nd, 2026, and Commissioner Crowell is on Zoom.
Great.
The time is 1:08, and a quorum is present. First, we have future votes for consideration today. Staff have prepared reports for 20 Berry Street. Lucia Marquez-Reagan is here to present.
Welcome.
Hello, Chair Garodnick and Commissioners. This is a pre-vote recommendation by the Department for 20 Berry Street, which was certified by the Commission on September 15th, 2025, and a public hearing was held January 7th, 2026. 20 Berry is a private application by Mahata Corp. To facilitate a 10-story, 192,000 square foot mixed commercial and industrial development, which would contain 32,000 square feet of required industrial uses and provide 9,690 square feet of publicly accessible open space. The project area is located at 20 Berry Street in the Greenpoint-Williamsburg IBZ in Community District 1, Brooklyn. The department recommends approval of 20 Berry Street, an application for a zoning map amendment from an M11 to an M12, an industrial business incentive area, IBIA special permit, and a text amendment to map the project area as an IBIA. Together, the proposed actions would permit the proposed development to use a maximum 4.8 FAR under M12 zoning district for commercial and required industrial uses, 2 FAR for permitted uses, 2 FAR for incentive uses, and 0.8 FAR for required industrial uses for a total of 4.8. The department supports the increase in job density at this site by including a mix of commercial and industrial jobs in a walkable and transit accessible area. The proposed development would rise to a height of 135 feet above the 110 feet permitted due to the creation of 4,800 square feet of publicly accessible open space, which meets the requirements of zoning section 7494.5 to permit an additional 25 feet overall height. The department believes that the bulk and massing proposed is appropriate for the local context and is consistent with nearby developments like 25 Kent and is designed with a loft-like envelope with open space fronting McCarran Park. The department also notes that the applicant proposes an additional 4,890 feet of publicly accessible open space for a total of 9,690 feet of open space distributed throughout the development. The department supports modifications to the open space requirements as it permits the applicant to locate open space on Berry Street across from McCarran Park and creating an overall space that is more easily accessible to pedestrians and activates the development on 3 frontages. In addition, the applicant seeks to reduce parking and loading requirements to provide a total of 80 seller parking spaces, 2 loading berths, both accessed via curb cut on North 13th Street. The department supports this reduction in the underlying M12 zoning district requirements. Without special permit, it would require 700 parking spaces and 8 loading berths. The department also supports the removal of 6 existing curb cuts, including 3 from Berry Street, 2 from North 12th, and 1 from North 13th Street, as the area is adjacent to McCarran Park, an active and popular park. The department notes that the proposed development is in line with the goals of the Industrial Plan NYC and facilitates a pedestrian-oriented mixed-use development with modern industrial space in a neighborhood industrial area. In summary, the department believes that the proposed density of uses, height, and creation of publicly accessible open space is appropriate at the proposed development site due to its proximity to transit, its location between two large public open spaces at McCarran Park and Bushwick and future Bushwick Inlet Park, and the growing population in the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, next.
I'd like to update that Commissioner Marin is also on Zoom and has been since the beginning of the meeting.
Great, thank you. Welcome, Commissioner Marin.
Next is 1325 Avenue of the Americas. There was a follow-up memo in your materials, and Trevor is here to present.
Good afternoon, Chair and Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
The following is a post-hearing follow-up and staff recommendation for a third modification to the CPC certification for the through-block Galleria POPs at 1325 Avenue of the Americas, and a text amendment to permit open-air cafes in through-block Gallerias. Approval of the requested actions would permit design upgrades to the through-block Galleria at 1325 Avenue of the Americas and permit open-air cafe use adjacent to and accessory to the Kaiseki Room and La Grande Boucherie restaurants within the POPs. At the public hearing on Wednesday, December 3rd, members of the Commission requested the applicant speaker for La Grande Boucherie to respond to CB5's recommendation to provide signage indicating public restroom access, as well as provide additional information on compliance with building code and additional revenue anticipated with respect to the expanded seating area. The applicant has provided a response that was included in your materials. The department recommends approval of this application and is generally supportive of the activation of POPs with complementary uses, such as open-air cafes. The department notes that requiring public restroom access for this application would be out of scope. The department recognizes the need for greater public restroom access in our city. However, the role that POPs can play in meeting that need requires careful analysis and review. The department believes that imposing such a requirement in the context of an individual application does not provide the appropriate opportunity for the department or the Commission to consider critical issues such as universal accessibility, the ability for the public to reasonably traverse the establishment to reach the restroom, liability, signage, added costs associated with maintenance and security, and the fact that open-air cafes are only approved for 3-year terms. Moreover, for many open-air cafe applications, including the one before the Commission today, the restaurant owner is the applicant. In situations such as this, it is infeasible for the restaurant owner to make alterations to the private property outside the area of their establishment. Again, the department supports and recommends approval of the land use application before the Commission and acknowledges that any future action to evaluate POPs regulations should include consideration of public restroom availability and access. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next item. Thank you. Thank you.
Next is Flushing Creek CSO Disinfection Facilities. There was a follow-up memo in your materials, and Alike is here to present.
Hi, Alike.
Hello. Good afternoon, Chair Garodnick and Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
The Department of City Planning staff finds the Department of Environmental Protection and Department of Citywide Administrative Services proposal for site selection, acquisition, and city map change actions appropriate. These actions would facilitate the construction of 2 combined sewer overflow disinfectant facilities, and the proposed project would improve Flushing Creek's overall water quality. These facilities would significantly expand the efficacy of the existing retention tank and treatment plant by treating 98% of combined sewer overflow discharges into the creek. Approval of these actions would also fulfill the requirements of the 1993 consent order between the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation and the New York City Department of Environmental Protection. A DEP follow-up communication was included in the Commission's package, and a CPC report reflecting this recommendation has been drafted for the Commission. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Staff have prepared reports on Arden Heights Wood Stream restoration, and lastly, for consideration is Skyline Playground upgrades. Briefing materials were provided. Next, we'll pause this meeting and open the City Planning Commission public meeting.
Great. Welcome, everybody, to the public meeting of the City Planning Commission. Today's date is February 2nd, Groundhog Day, with some unfortunate news starting this morning with several groundhogs predicting 6 more weeks of winter. Madam Secretary, back to you, now that I've covered the important business of the day.
Good afternoon. This is the City Planning Commission special public meeting held remotely and in person in the CPC hearing room at 120 Broadway Lower Concourse. Today is Monday, February 2nd, 2026, and I will now call the roll. Chair Garodnick.
Here.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Here.
Commissioner Benjamin.
Present.
Commissioner Cerullo.
Here.
Commissioner Crowell, remote.
Present.
Commissioner Dweck.
Here.
Commissioner Gold.
Here.
Commissioner Goodrich.
Here.
Commissioner Kamani.
Here.
Commissioner Mann. Commissioner Marin, remote.
Here.
Commissioner Osorio.
Here.
Commissioner Ramprashad.
Here.
A quorum is present. The first item is the approval of the minutes of the public meeting of Wednesday, January 21st, 2026.
Great. I'll make a motion to approve those minutes of January 21.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Gold, for the second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, minutes are approved. Thank you.
Scheduling, calendar number 1, scheduling Wednesday, February 18th, 2026 for a public hearing to be held in person in the CPC hearing room, 120 Broadway, and remotely.
Great. I make a motion to approve the resolution. Thank you, Commissioner Ramprashad, for the second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, resolution is adopted.
The next part of the calendar is the report section on page 5. Borough of Brooklyn, calendar numbers 2, 3, and 4. Community District 1, calendar number 2, C 240271ZMK. Calendar number 3, N 240272ZRK. Calendar number 4, C 240273ZSK. In the matter of an application for zoning map and zoning text amendments and a zoning special permit concerning 20 Berry Street for favorable reports on calendar numbers 2, 3, and 4. Chair Garodnick.
Aye.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Benjamin.
Aye.
Commissioner Cerullo.
Yes.
Commissioner Crowell.
Yes.
Commissioner Dweck.
Yes.
Commissioner Gold.
Yes.
Commissioner Goodrich.
Sorry, I'm abstaining just because I didn't have enough time to review this one. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Kamani.
Yes.
Commissioner Mann, absent. Commissioner Osorio.
Yes.
Commissioner Marin, apologies.
Yes.
Commissioner Ramprashad.
Yes.
Favorable reports have been adopted on calendar numbers 2, 3, and 4. Borough of Manhattan, calendar numbers 5 and 6. Community District 5, calendar number 5, N 240303ZRM. Calendar number 6, M 880194CZCM. In the matter of zoning text amendment and a modification to a previously approved certification concerning 1325 Avenue of the Americas. For a favorable report on calendar number 5 and for the adoption of calendar number 6. Chair Garodnick.
Aye.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Benjamin.
I'm voting aye, but during the course of our investigation into this item, I had some issues with how the design of the public open space versus the restaurant has played out. I understand this is a special permit for 3 years, and they'll have to come back if they want to renew it. So I'm expecting to see that this new design really makes an effort to let the public know that they can use the space without buying something from the restaurant, without talking to the maitre d', for their own purposes.
Unknown caller.
And with that caveat that I'm going to be looking during the course of this time at how the restaurant fulfills this function. I vote aye.
Commissioner Cerullo.
Yes.
Commissioner Crowell.
Yes.
Commissioner Dweck.
Yes.
Commissioner Gold.
Yes.
Commissioner Goodrich.
Abstain.
Commissioner Kamani.
Yes.
Commissioner Mann is absent. Commissioner Marin.
So I'd like to make a few comments on the public space as well. It does not feel as a public space. It feels more over like a private space. I do know that signs need to be put up identifying this as a public space, and they need to be nice and clear so people don't feel intimidated because of such beauty that they don't feel they can't go in. So with that, my vote is yes.
Commissioner Osorio.
I vote yes, and I concur with my colleagues regarding the public accessibility or the feel of public accessibility in this space. And I also urge the Commission to consider exploring a revision to the PUBS program to really explore the requirement of public bathrooms. Thank you.
Commissioner Ramprashad.
Yes.
A favorable report has been adopted on calendar number 5, and calendar number 6 has been adopted. Borough of Queens, calendar number 7 and 8. Community District 7, calendar number 7, C 250324 PCQ. Calendar number 8, C 250323 MMQ. In the matter of an application for a site selection and acquisition and a city map amendment concerning Flushing Creek CSO disinfection facilities. For favorable reports on calendar number 7 and 8, Chair Garodnick.
Aye.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Benjamin.
Here again, I'd like to applaud the department for the work they've been doing to try and deal with the CSO problem that the city has. I had asked a number of questions about the treatment of the materials that would be part of the overflow in the event of a storm situation, which they have answered quite well, and I thank them for that. And just want to commend them on doing a good job in advancing the environmental requirements that the city will need going into the future. And with that, I vote aye.
Commissioner Cerullo.
Yes.
Commissioner Crowell.
Yes.
Commissioner Dweck.
Yes.
Commissioner Gold.
Yes.
Commissioner Goodrich. Commissioner Kamani.
Yes, I'd also like to associate myself with Commissioner Benjamin's comments and thank the department.
Commissioner Mann is absent. Commissioner Marin.
Yes.
Commissioner Osorio.
Yes.
Commissioner Ramprashad.
Yes.
Favorable reports have been adopted on calendar number 7 and 8. Borough of Staten Island, calendar number 9, Community District 3, C 250335 PQR, in the matter of an application for acquisition concerning Arden Heights Woods Stream Restoration, BMP AH-2. For a favorable report on calendar number 9, Chair Garodnick.
Aye.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Benjamin.
Aye.
Commissioner Cerullo.
Yes.
Commissioner Crowell.
Yes.
Commissioner Dweck.
Yes.
Commissioner Gold.
Yes.
Commissioner Goodrich.
Abstain.
Commissioner Kamani.
Yes.
Commissioner Mann is absent. Commissioner Marin.
Yes.
Commissioner Osorio.
Yes.
Commissioner Ramprashad.
Yes.
A favorable report has been adopted on calendar number 9. Also in Staten Island, calendar number 10, Community District 1, N260134ZAR, in the matter of an application for the grant of an authorization concerning Skyline Playground upgrades for the adoption of calendar number 10, Chair Garodnick.
Aye.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Benjamin.
Aye.
Commissioner Cerullo.
Yes.
Commissioner Crowell.
Yes.
Commissioner Dweck.
Yes.
Commissioner Gold. Commissioner Goodrich.
Abstain.
Commissioner Kamani.
Yes.
Commissioner Mann is absent. Commissioner Marin.
Yes.
Commissioner Osorio.
Yes.
Commissioner Ramprashad.
Yes.
Calendar number 10 has been adopted. Chair Garodnick, there's no other business before the Commission for the public meeting. I do have some public information to share.
Terrific. Why don't you share that information, and then we will adjourn this meeting.
A reminder that you can always submit written testimony online through DCP's website or by mailing your comments to City Planning Commission, Calendar Information Office, 120 Broadway, 35th floor, New York, New York, 10271, and the time is 1:26.
Thank you very much. We are adjourned. Welcome to the next meeting of the City Planning Commission review session, February 2nd. Let's get to it.
We'll pick up again today for today's session with a special presentation on the Borough-Based Jails Program, Manhattan Facility, and we are joined by the Department of Design and Construction, Tudor Perino and OG Industries, and HOK, both in person and for Q&A remote.
Great. Welcome. Nice to have you here.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
I'm actually from the New York City Department of Correction. My name is Alex Maldonado. I'm the Assistant Commissioner for Strategic Operations. I'm going to introduce our conversation today, introduce you to the Borough-Based Jail Program, for those of you who may not be familiar with it, and then I'll hand it over to my friends, both from DDC and the Design Build team, to talk more about their plans. So again, we're going to go over the BBJ program. And the overall program, was designed many, many moons ago at this point, but the purpose remains the same: to design and build safe and humane facilities that support New York City's commitment to criminal justice reform. And that's more true now than ever, right, for the department. There's plenty of news about the department happening over the weekend and in the past couple of weeks. And we are committed, along with our agency partners, to creating safe, humane, and secure facilities throughout the city, grounding those facilities in dignity and respect for all, advancing exemplary public architecture, relating those facilities within the city and creating a sense of place for both people inside and out, collaborating meaningfully with our city agency, our friends, and our community partners, minimizing those impacts to surrounding neighborhoods, providing site safety and meeting all regulatory requirements, optimizing overall facility operations and efficiency for the years to come, and then, of course, exemplifying our Department of Design and Construction's principles of excellence and engaging in robust minority and women-owned business enterprise participation. The 4 facilities that are being built as part of the Borough-Based Jail Program are largely on the sites of the former MDC, BKDC, and QDC sites. We'll start in Manhattan, where the Manhattan Detention Complex was dismantled, and the Manhattan facility will be at that site next to the criminal courthouse. In Kings County, the Brooklyn Detention Center on Atlantic Avenue was dismantled, and then the Brooklyn facility is going up on that site. At Queens, the QDC facility was taken down, and the Queens facility will be built on that site. And then, of course, the Bronx is being built on a former NYPD tow pound, but that's a different story. And that's near to, or about a mile away from the courthouse in the Bronx. Again, program summary, right? Replacing those jails on Rikers Island to build 4 community-based facilities. There's going to be a total of 4,160 beds, with approximately 1,040 beds per site. Our goal here is really to build smaller housing units, right? Most are 20 beds. You'll find on Rikers Island, there are upwards of 50 beds per housing unit. So this is a real shift in how we operate and committing ourselves to direct supervision. The facilities include greater opportunity for outdoor recreation. They exponentially expand the access to medical and mental health care with specialized educational and programming activities. Improved facility access also for family, friends, attorneys, and service providers, right? Really building and honing in on the community portion of the community-based jailing. And then, of course, enhanced wellness spaces to support our uniformed and non-uniformed staff members. I'm going to hand it over to my friend Jeff Margulies from the Department of Design and Construction to tell you more.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Alex. Jeff Margulies, Associate Commissioner of External Affairs at DDC. So we're here today to talk about the Manhattan conceptual design. This is the last but certainly not the least facility that we've presented to you since the Commission's original BBJ ULIP approval in 2019. We appreciate the continued collaboration with both the Commission and the staff as we adapt the design to feedback we've received and also continue to maintain the goals of the overall BBJ program that Alex just outlined. A quick update on where we are overall with the BBJ program. You'll see the status here. In Brooklyn, we're heavily into steel erection. If you ever visit, you can see the building rising from the ground. We're actually topping off in the next few months. And Bronx, Queens, and Manhattan, we expect construction to start this year with the substantial completion dates noted there at the bottom. And happy to say we remain on schedule and on budget as of today. Last but not least, just wanted to give you an update on who we have here today with the Manhattan Facility Team, our partners in city government, our program manager, AECOM Hill, Alex from Department of Correction, you heard from Correctional Health Services, MOCJ, and City Hall, and then, of course, our design builder, TPONG with HOK. And now I'm going to turn it over to HOK.
Chairman and Commissioners, it's nice to be able to present to you a status update. On behalf of Tudor, Perini, and ONG, we're really excited about beginning construction fairly soon. I have two colleagues with me, Amin Krishan, who's the design principal for the project. My name is Ken Drucker. I'm the design partner from HOK, and Autumn Visconti is our lead landscape architect dealing with the public realm. For us, this is an important project in terms of creating a civic identity for the BBJ program in Manhattan. It's about integrating into neighborhoods and creating a building that's sustainable and represents design excellence. Bounded by Baxter Street to the west and Center Street to the east, and the Criminal Court building to the south, and Chun Pak Senior Housing to the north. The existing detention facility was disassembled several years ago at this point, and we're looking forward to replacing that with a building that essentially is the northernmost extreme of the Civic District that takes the fabric of Chinatown, Tribeca, Little Italy, and the Civic District and integrates the new building into the context. You can see in this map, Chinatown is to the east, and Tribeca is to the west, the Civic Center to the south, and Little Italy to the north. And for us, the most important gesture is this connection of the White Street pedestrian arcade, which in the ULURP was 35 feet wide, and we've now made it 50 feet wide and 55 feet tall to connect Chinatown and Tribeca together. At the bottom of the page, you can see Center Street from right to left. We have a sally port where you enter off of Center Street and you drive through the block to exit on Baxter Street. In the center, you can see the 50-foot wide White Street pedestrian arcade. And then the first black arrow is the main building entrance. The second black arrow to the left is the staff entrance, and then access to 125 parking spaces below grade is accessible from Center Street. On Baxter Street, we have a community entrance on the north corner, the arrow on the left. And then you can see along the White Street pedestrian arcade, multiple connections to retail along the arcade, and then display cases that you'll see an entrance to retail off of Baxter Street. For us, the most important thing is connecting Columbus Park to the Collect Bond Park through the White Street pedestrian arcade and maintaining a civic presence along Center Street and a neighborhood presence along Baxter Street. Amin?
Good afternoon. I'm Amin Krishan, design principal from HOK Architects. In developing the project, we have undertaken engagement with the community, with Community Board 1, and with city agencies. We've held 2 community workshops to date, and we've had 1 engagement session with the Land Use Committee of Community Board 1. We're going to hold a minimum of 2 more community workshops and have a minimum of 2 more community board engagements as we progress the design of the project. We are committed to engaging with the community, incorporating their feedback to shape the project positively and make it part of their neighborhood. At every engagement session, we record every comment that the community makes to us. We provide written feedback to the community in responses. But more importantly than that, we are analyzing their feedback through a data-driven analysis method that identifies key takeaways for the project. And then we illustrate back to the community how those key takeaways have been incorporated into the project itself. And we're going to continue to do that through all of this year and next. The design and the development of the design is based on the ULURP envelope that was approved in 2019. That's what you see on the screen before you right now. The ULURP envelope was set to be about 17 feet lower than the top of the criminal courthouse. We are working vigorously to carve down from that envelope to break the scale of the building down, but we're absolutely within the ULURP envelope. We have a strenuous programmatic requirements of being able to incorporate the 1040 beds, provide the mental health and other health services, and extensive programming within the building. Balancing both program and contextual responses, our first central approach was to widen the White Street passage from the minimum 35 feet to 50 feet, which is very similar to a typical New York City street, so they would knit itself into the fabric of the city. That White Street passage is vertically registered through the building. And then at a second hierarchy, we've also carved the building in the north-south axis, breaking it down into 4 separate quadrants. Those 4 quadrants can then be stepped down in terms of height towards the north and the east, which is towards the lower contextual buildings on the site. Contextual response is very important. We've reduced the massing above White Street, allowing daylight and sunlight to come down to the street level. Also making strong contextual connections to the criminal courthouse, registering the vertical volumes and continuing that rhythm of the criminal courthouse. And then at the street level experience, the height of the podium or the lower part of the building reflects the height of the buildings across the street from Baxter Street and also pulls in the horizontal datum of the podium of the courthouse itself. Again, diving further into understanding and studying our context, this is just a sample of some of the civic buildings. We've studied a number more. For the ideas that a civic building conveys, the idea of permanence and dignity through their volumetric expression, for example, the criminal courthouse that you see on the right-hand side, the 3 vertical volumes that express that, the idea of verticality also being expressed through the columns of City Hall, the Supreme Court, and then the banding of the windows on the criminal courthouse, creating that verticality and reinforcing that sense. In contrast, we also have the neighborhoods of Little Italy and Chinatown right next to us. We want to be responsive to that. It's a very, very different urban fabric here. The scale of the buildings is much, much smaller. The rhythm of the buildings. We've studied the scale of the fenestration, the rhythm of that, the 3-dimensional articulation of the fenestration, and the materiality, very importantly. Our building responds, therefore, to both of those contextual responses. What is shown in blue in this slide is a part of the building that is predominantly responding to the civic scale. This is a civic facility and really wants to be part of the civic fabric. However, on the street level, where the neighborhood experience is most drastic, that's where the building starts to incorporate the lessons we've learned from the neighborhood itself, and then carrying it up through White Street Passage as this incredibly strong neighborhood connector. A view from Collect Pond, that's along Center Street. We want to illustrate the similarity of the massing, the volumetric proposed massing of the proposed facility, very, very similar to the volumetric verticality of the courthouse. And then again, pulling in the windows that you see in the courthouse, the solid to glass and interpreting that through a modern language in the new proposed facility. A view from the north on the left-hand side and a view from the west on the right-hand side, both illustrating the idea of being able to break the scale of the building down into smaller quadrants and connect it into the fabric of the city. The massing that you just saw is essentially organized with below-grade parking and staff support facility below grade. At ground, we have lobbies and retail community spaces. The lower levels of the building, the podium, is the building support, including health facilities, administration. And then level 6 upwards is where the housing levels are located, with mechanical predominantly at the top of the building. A ground floor plan illustrating the community and retail spaces that are situated along the widened White Street Arcade and Baxter Street, activating street use, and then the main public lobby and staff lobby along Center Street, knitting into the family of entrances and exits of civic buildings along Center Street and reinforcing that civic corridor and identity. This is a view of the main public lobby and the visiting waiting space. It's been designed to incorporate groups of various sizes for individuals who might come, or people might come in larger group. It supports intergenerational groups from, providing for children's play facility to incorporating furniture which has armrests so that it is easier to get up from that, so supporting seniors. The facility also, brings in tremendous amount of daylight and views. You can see the glazing at the end of this facility, so being connected to the outdoors and providing a calm and dignified environment. From the exterior, you're seeing that lobby on the left-hand side with the very transparent glazing indicating the entrance, providing a clear wayfinding into the facility. And on the right-hand side, you're seeing the White Street Arcade with retail lining it. Now, as this is a view from White Street Arcade from the other side, and this is incorporating warm materials, but you can also see how the widened width of White Street knits into the rest of the White Street as it continues further down. A view along Baxter Street reflecting the undulating facade of the proposed facility on the right-hand side that incorporates material and scale that reflects the neighborhood on the left-hand side. A view from Columbus Park, and then on Baxter Street, a street-level view that shows you the retail and community that's along the street levels, activating the neighborhood and really strengthening the active streets of Chinatown. Now, part of the streetscape and public realm landscape is an integral part of that, so I'd like to invite my colleague Autumn to walk us through the landscape design.
Returning to the context of Chinatown and the Civic District, we see the public realm as a connected landscape that really strengthens the relationship between Collect Pond Park and Columbus Park. And we're trying to achieve this through enhancing overall visibility, walkability, and improving the amount of vegetation cover around and through the site. Zooming in, this is a collection of diagrams highlighting how we're approaching the design for the arcade itself. We're informed by available daylight through a number of studies, which we'll go over in a little bit. And we're also orienting the programming and the use of materials in relation to the characters of Chinatown and the Civic District. Here, we're introducing a green spine that turns seating inwards towards the center of the arcade and introducing a collection of programmatic spaces in between each of the planters to really promote as much flexible use and activities within the center of this green spine. We're also maintaining a clear walkable path along the retail edges of the arcade to really help activate this from a pedestrian point of view. The overall vernacular of the arcade is designed in a way that responds to both the Civic District and Chinatown. Here we're using the front-facing Center Street, which is along the page bottom, as a more kind of calming and formal design orientation in terms of seating and planting, while the side facing Baxter Street, which is along the north side of the page, is more of a park-like setting, again, using opportunities for different furnishing elements and programmatic spaces to help inform some of the anticipated program areas between each of the planters. We've conducted a number of daylight studies to help us better understand how to promote as much vegetation as possible throughout the pedestrian arcade, and using these daylight studies to help position the planters in areas where we're receiving abundant daylight. This is an overall site plan of the public realm and landscape, and here we're introducing landscape as a way to kind of break down the scale of the space and really using vegetation and planters to wrap around the streetscape corners into the arcade, drawing pedestrians into the heart of the arcade and from Center Street to Baxter Street. Site security is an important part of our design. The facility requires a fully enclosed perimeter, and we're doing our best to incorporate as many of these security design elements within the streetscape planters. This includes bollards as well as seat walls that double as vehicular barriers, and these are all introduced as civic amenities around the facility. This is a diagrammatic overview of anticipated pedestrian flows as well as vehicular flows coming from Center Street. You'll see on the right-hand side of the drawing, we have a designated Sallyport entrance with, from Center Street continuing through to Baxter. And we also have a vehicle entrance for the garage on the northern side of the facility. These are just a few views illustrating the overall look and feel of the public realm. Again, using as much vegetation as possible within the daylight areas and using seating and seat wall elements to help elevate these planters and introduce as many seating opportunities around the site. Using landscape terraces to help break down the scale of the entrance, as well as its relationship with the surrounding streetscape and public realm. And really using the opportunity for different programmatic elements, such as furnishing that you see here as gaming tables that relate back to Columbus Park in the western part of the arcade. And this is a view along Baxter Street, again, using landscape to really hide some of the security design elements and framing the sidewalk with as much landscape as possible. So I'm going to hand it back over to Aman, and I believe that's an opening for Q&A.
That's the conclusion of our presentation for today. We're aiming to integrate landscape, public realm, programming, planning, and architecture as a sensitive contextual response that's grounded in the principles of dignity and respect. Would like to open it up for discussion.
Great, thank you. I think you said at the beginning, could you just note the difference in height between the building as proposed and the building immediately to the south?
The criminal courthouse.
Criminal courthouse, yes.
So based on average curb levels, what we showed on the slide was NAV 88 heights that translate to 19 feet, but based on average curb level, the height difference is 17 feet.
The difference in height is 17 feet between this building and the criminal court building?
Correct.
Next door, okay. All right, Vice Chair Knuckles.
On the critical path slide, I noticed you referred to the taking down of the building or whatever as dismantling as opposed to demolition. Is there a substantive difference between the two, or is that just semantics?
I'd like to invite the city team to respond to that.
I think it's definitely semantics, but there is a difference in practicality in terms of how they take it down piece by piece as opposed to taking a wrecking ball and knocking it down. Because obviously with all four facilities, there's neighboring communities immediately adjacent to each of them. And all of those dismantles have been completed, just to clarify as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Commissioner Cerullo?
Just a quick question. I seem to recall I may have asked this question at a previous briefing, but in just seeing the renderings, I don't remember the answer exactly, so forgive me. But the public realm piece of this is quite beautiful. Who will be responsible for maintaining the public realm? The horticulture, the cleaning, all of the things that may be happening there.
I'm going to invite Department of Corrections to respond to that.
Thank you. The conversation about maintenance, ultimately, the city is responsible for maintaining this property as we're putting up the building, and we're certainly really enjoying the designs and the landscaping that our friends are designing or providing to us, I should say. So ultimately, I do believe that the Department of Correction will be responsible for the maintenance, but of course, we'll be relying on funding and all sorts of resources from our city partners to do so. But it is a city effort, and the department will take ownership.
And the day-to-day sort of the sanitation related, like, if there's garbage pails outside, all those things would be, right now at least, agency responsibility.
That's correct.
Okay. I mean, I hope it'd be interesting to see how this plays out, because nothing could be worse than having this beautiful sort of roadmap with empty tree pits and dead bushes and no plantings, the things that happen by the environment and people's disrespect of them and all the things that happen in our city. So it'll be interesting to see where that part of this process goes, but thank you.
Absolutely, and I want to, I hope, comfort you guys in saying that this conversation has already started, right? We're definitely thinking about this and want to make sure, like you said, that it remains as beautiful as designed.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Osorio?
Thank you, Chair. Thanks so much for the presentation and for keeping us up to date in terms of the progress of the different projects. I have two questions. One question has to do with the way in which you've been processing community input. So thanks so much for that slide. I noticed that the image that you have on the left of the slide is really from the Brooklyn project. So I'm wondering if you could summarize a little bit, what have been the top concerns and in what ways have you addressed them? From what you said and from some of the materials or the presentation, I saw that there was a lot of concerns in terms of the public realm, which you've made a lot of emphasis in the presentation, but I want to understand what other concerns have you heard and how are you planning to address them?
Absolutely. So we have had 2 community workshops and 1 community board interaction. The major comment that we hear from the community is their concern about bulk and height. We are addressing that. We are, our starting point, of course, is we must stay within the ULURP approved envelope, but in carving the building up, being able to register White Street, widening White Street, making that a really important neighborhood connector, bringing more than 50% of White Street is open to sky, so there's less than 50% that has building mass over it. So making that feel like a real street that people will use and have active uses has been our design response there. We also heard concerns about materiality from the neighborhood. Initial renderings that we had shared with them, there was a lot of glazing that we had utilized. So we have worked over the last 6 months or so to actually modify design quite substantially in response to those community concerns. We started to integrate a lot of warm material, the coloring of the warm material. We've actually also had a couple of iterations where we've had community feedback. The last round was really quite positive, where they sort of feel that this now feels like it belongs to Chinatown, has the scale, has the texture that responds to them. In terms of, we've also heard from justice advocates for the interiors of the building, being able to provide spaces that are humanized, that are dignified, that incorporate color, that incorporate warm materials, that have a wood feel and have a warm texture to it. So we continue to engage with them on those subjects.
Thank you. 2 really quick follow-up questions on the exterior. Or in the bulk and the height. When do you plan to make determination on this, just so that the public can have a clear understanding of when they should expect that?
The bulk and height as we present today is the proposed bulk and height.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
We're not anticipating any further changes.
Got it.
To that.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. And then the second question, in terms of the interior, I'm also very concerned along the lines of what you just said. Regarding the availability and the quality of educational spaces within the facility. And so I'm wondering if you can say a little bit about that.
So we have a significant amount of programming that is incorporated that includes vocational classrooms, that includes a horticulture program with both an indoor greenhouse and an outdoor space. There's an indoor gymnasium. There are spiritual spaces. And there's a culinary arts program. Did I miss anything? So there's a significant amount of those spaces. They are located predominantly at the top of the building that has the best aspects in terms of daylight and views. So there is those are shared amenities for the people in custody. And they are being designed with consideration for both maximizing daylight, providing solar comfort, optimizing views to the sky, but also balancing privacy for both the people in custody and the neighbors.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And if it's possible, not now, but as a follow-up, if you can share at least the ratio, like how big are those classrooms and specifically just general characteristics about them, whether they have natural light, et cetera, that would be really important for me. Thank you.
All of the programming spaces have access to natural light. And we can absolutely provide data on what the square footage is and what occupancies they can have.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Benjamin.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I just had a few questions. They fall into three areas. One, when we were originally looking at the White Street Jail, it was before the federal government made the decision that there couldn't be commercial or retail on the ground floor unrelated to the use as a detention facility. But the community at that point had very much wanted to have the ground floor flow as a result of the commercial activities that surrounded it. And while I know that you've done a lot of glazing, et cetera, how do you see that the design has responded to that concern that the community had, and I believe still has?
I'm going to invite city team to talk about programming of the space, and then I'm happy to talk about the design.
Okay.
So as it's envisioned and part of the ULURP commitments, one was the commercial space, which is being returned to Chungpak, which is the neighboring senior center. They previously had commercial space that they managed through DCAS. They are getting back the same amount of commercial space that they had. And then secondarily, there is community space that was requested as part of the ULURP. So there's a conversation with many city agencies, but primarily DCAS, DYCD, Youth and Community Development, SBS, and Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice. So we're still allocating exactly how those spaces will be met, but it's about 40,000 square feet. Am I getting that? 20,000, excuse me. 20,000 square feet that will be allocated to those agencies to manage with programming that fits the community.
And will there be entries to those facilities on the street, or will you have to go through?
No, there'll be separate entries for all of the retail space as well as the community space. You will not have to go through the jail
security
facility.
And
of course, it'll be open to the public at street level for all of those.
And it will be managed by, you said half of it, or the same amount that
Chungpak is getting back the same amount of retail space they had previously in separate sections, so we can probably show you on the map if that's helpful. And then the 20,000 will be managed by the city through programming.
And will be leased through DCAS?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you for that. I know the community will be has been happy to hear that. My second issue was, you've talked a lot about how this works for the detainees, their families, their attorneys, et cetera. But one of the biggest problems we have right now is both morale and physical retention of corrections officers. Clearly, they are unhappy at Rikers. They were unhappy before, and you haven't really talked about how this experience will be for them.
No, and that's a very, very good question. We didn't talk about it today because we were limited in terms of presentation, but we are very mindful of all of the users of the facility and the diversity that they come in. The staff is the corrections officers, as you say. They're also people who work in the back of house facilities, the storage, the laundry. There are also volunteer services, attorneys. There's a whole host of folks who come to this facility, and being able to design a facility that provides a dignified experience for all of them. For the staff and the officers in particular, it's incredibly important to provide spaces that offer respite. Of the jobs, there is, I just pulled up the ground floor because I was going to just show you the community and retail spaces here, but there is a separate staff lobby that has direct daylight. It actually is a mini building almost within this building that takes you down to staff facilities and then connects you again to levels 3 and 4 where there are additional staff facilities. There is staff dining provided, and on every floor where the staff is working, there are dedicated staff respite areas provided.
And are they behind? Well, my father was a corrections officer, and one of the things he always talked about was people don't realize you're locked up along with the detainees. So are the facilities that you're talking about, which side of the detainee wall are they on?
They are on both sides. So it offers an opportunity. There is respite rooms that are directly with the people in custody spaces. So corrections officer have a space to go to, have immediate access to space. There are also spaces that are on the other side of the line of security, where there is facilities. So there's a fitness center available. There's a break area. There is a cafeteria available. But that's on the outside of the security. Yes.
And have the corrections officers themselves been involved?
Absolutely.
In the same way that the public has in planning how this facility is going to work?
Absolutely, but I would like to have Department of Corrections give more detail.
Thank you, Aman. Yes, as a representative of the department, I can confirm that we have spent a lot of time thinking about how we improve these facilities for our staff members, not just the individuals in custody, obviously, who have an improved experience, but it is really important to have staff members who want to come to work. And so designing and encouraging the designers to really think about what will it take to get someone to want to come to work in a jail facility. So a lot of, again, we have, as Aman talked about, we have staff wellness spaces before and after the secure perimeter. And so, again, fitness centers, wellness centers, yoga rooms. We also have facilities for, what we call care or mental health access for our correction officers. We have our HMD Health Management Division inside the building, so they don't have to go to Queens Junction to go and receive those services. They can come here. So we're really trying to make it a one-stop shop for our staff members as well. In terms of
things like restrooms?
Oh, yeah, well, there's plenty of restrooms. There's actually probably a restroom adjacent to every single housing area within the secure perimeter, just dedicated for staff. And again, a plethora, I would say, of staff break rooms as well. And that was, again, really important to us to make sure that that was there. And I've rambled on and I forgot your last question.
Well, no, I'm just trying to make sure that the thinking and that there's been meetings with both the union and other representatives of the corrections officers. I know that there have been a lot of problems with both retention of correction officers and under the consent decree with the behavior of some of the officers. The officers, I understand, will say that it relates to the nature of the detainees, and the detainees will say that it relates to the nature of the officers' behavior. But I'm just wanting to make sure that we're making the experience for them also.
Absolutely. And what I can tell you is we've received a lot of feedback in the similar way that we go to the community with our community design workshops with our friends at DDC. We've gone actually into the jails to have focus groups with our staff members. They've actually experienced virtual reality of some of the designs to be able to see and comment on the spaces that they're seeing. So we are incorporating, when we talk about feedback, we're incorporating everyone's feedback and all of the users of the facilities. And so I'm excited about that.
Is there a particular area when the officer comes in? Well, there's parking spaces below, correct?
There are a limited number of parking spaces below the facility.
And the officers may use them?
There's a limited number of parking spaces below the facility. It's very likely going to be authorized access only. So there's only 100.
Okay. And
or 100 and so. Don't make a liar of me.
However the officer gets into the facility, they go through security, and then I assume there's a place for them to leave their weapons.
So a typical officer would come in probably off the street. They would walk into our staff lobby, which is very similar to the public lobby in design and feel, right? Again, because we want to welcome people to work. They will have an opportunity to secure their weapon. But what the initial pass-through into the secure, into the facility is a non-intrusive search methodology. So I don't know if you've seen the evolved technology. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that word.
Into the walls?
But it's just sticks, and you walk through the sticks, and it alerts you for guns and bombs, right? That's what we're worried about at that moment. But you can still bring your cell phone. You can bring any other items that you have in your person because you're going to go to the locker room. So once you pass, you secure your weapon, you walk into the facility, you'll be able to go into the locker room space, which again is being designed very nice with showers, amenities, and those things. You'll be able to go to the gym, the yoga room if you can, or change and run upstairs to hit roll call. And that's when you go through a more intrusive, I would say, search through the line scan, the magnetometer, and all of those things to make sure that you don't have any contraband passing into the secure perimeter of the facility.
Sounds good. But,
yes.
And my last question is just a design question. Those bollards.
I'll turn that back to
I understand what they're for, but they're, from a street perspective, they're ugly. And if you're handicapped and trying to get out, it's hard many times to match the car matching up between the bollards with you trying to get your wheelchair out. So how do we, is there nothing else we can find, or can we find some where there's a wheelchair accessible place where maybe the bollards can sink down, or something that would allow these people to have a little dignity as they try to get out?
I agree. So bollards are really hard, right? That's why we're trying to integrate them into the planters as much as possible. We are maximizing the spacing between them to help. We do have a number of curb cuts around the site for pedestrian ramps, and I think that's our widest spacing available. We're also trying to set those back from the curb edge at the curb ramps. Those are currently under review and design. They're not reflected yet in this plan, but we are trying to push them a little bit further away from the curb line. And we have looked at a number of different security methods. The seat walls is our most successful. That's why we're integrating them as much as possible. But again, they're also a barrier. So the bollards is the one that people can move most freely around. So that's what we're currently working towards, the placement of those now.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Crowell on Zoom.
Yeah, thanks. I'm inspired by the changes in this area, and I really appreciate the public realm impacts that would be achieved as someone whose career is centered in this whole area. So let me ask this one question. I'd like to understand a little bit more about the transportation plan changes that will meet this development and what we can expect in the area.
Could you clarify the transportation plan changes? Are you referring to the Canal Street project by DOT?
No, just along Center and anything with Baxter. What would change with ingress and egress to the facility, with any correction vehicles, emergency vehicles, and just overall traffic in the area, which tends to be it's heavily congested at key times of the day.
Okay. So there's a couple of points of vehicle entry and egress for the site itself currently. We have for the basement parking, there is egress and ingress from Center Street. Now, that was in response to community comments. It was originally located on Baxter. They wanted it on Center to ease the congestion on Baxter, so that has been accommodated in the design. The other vehicular entry exits are for the Sally Port and the loading dock for the facility. Now, that's an ingress from Center and an egress out onto Baxter, so it's only a one-way traffic, which really eases the congestion. Right. On the streets themselves. And what it also does is takes all of those loading vehicles onto the site and off the street. So if I can explain that, and I'm not sure if... So you come in from Center and you go through secure gates into the Sallyport driveway. So it's a driveway within the site itself, and you egress out of Baxter. So all building loading functions are within this gray area. So any truck movement back and forth, pulling the garbage in, and any time the trucks are idling, that's all happening within the property line and taking congestion off the streets themselves. And the same for the Sallyport and the operations for Department of Correction and the NYPD Sallyport. They're all located within within that Sallyport driveway. Previously, at the previous detention center also had traffic going into White Street. White Street was essentially used as a parking garage. White Street is now entirely pedestrian. There will be no traffic there at all. So we hope that these will actually ease the traffic situation around the site quite considerably.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Rampersad?
Yes, one real quick question, because a lot of the points I was going to bring up are already brought up, and Commissioner Benjamin brought up a great point, because back in 2018, 2019, when this was in front of the commission, one of the main talking points was, you know, you're going to close Rikers and bring it into the boroughs, but are you going to fix the issues that are happening? So it'll be great to hear the next time come around a little bit more detail of how that's being worked on. I have two quick questions. One of them was, how much staff will be allocated to this facility? And if you can just, the second question is with regards to timeline, when do you estimate start of construction docs and moving forward?
So I'll answer about construction documents. We start construction documents in the fall this year, and it's about a year. Construction itself, the support for excavation and underground work is going to start second quarter of this year. And I will request Department of Corrections.
As for the total number of staff required for this facility, it's a little too early to tell. It really depends on the design. We assign officers to posts, and depending on how many areas they're able to supervise, utilizing active supervision is really kind of the determining factor. But a facility this size will have close to, I'm afraid to give a range. I'm not going to give you a range. But what I can tell you is that we are working diligently to maximize staffing efficiency. So, for example, each housing area is really only intended to have one officer with full, almost 360 views from the middle of the housing area, in addition to whatever tours they need to make, you know, on individual persons in custody. And then each programming area will have one officer supervising multiple classrooms or multiple vocational spaces. So depending on what the space is kind of what dictates the number of posts. So maybe in a presentation to come, I'll be able to share a better range.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay. Thank you all very much for being here and for all of your work on this, and certainly we appreciated the partnership that the Department of City Planning has had with all of you, so thank you. Okay, Madam Secretary, let's move on to the next item for the day.
The second item on our agenda is the certification of a major concession in Manhattan Community District 5. Our presenter is Dylan Latif Alwan.
Hello, Dylan.
Hello, good afternoon, Commissioners. Today, I will be presenting an application to expand a concession boundary in the Flatiron Nomad District. This is an application by the New York City Department of Transportation requesting a major concession to allow and expand revenue-generating concessions and sub-concessions along Broadway pursuant to Chapter 7 of the Rules for the City of New York. Project area extends along the Broadway corridor from West 31st Street in the north to East 19th Street in the south of Manhattan Community District 5. The image to the right shows the existing concession area in blue, the proposed expansion of the concession area boundaries in red, and the final proposed total combined boundaries following ULURP in green. I'll take a brief moment to define what major concessions are. Concessions are grants for private businesses to use city-owned property for their business, resulting in compensation for the city used to maintain the public concession space. A major concession is when the city owns space being used by private businesses exceeds 42,000 square feet. This is defined in Chapter 7, Section 2 of the Rules for the City of New York. On the right is an example of the last approved major concession in Times Square, which was approved in 2024 and has since been implemented by DOT as part of their greater Broadway Vision initiative. Broadway Vision is DOT's comprehensive plan for creating safer, pedestrianized sections of Broadway throughout lower parts of Manhattan. The section being presented on today is centered around Madison Square and is partnered with the local business improvement district, the Flatiron Nomad Partnership. The main purpose of this proposed expansion is intended to build on the existing concession, increase public space amenities, activate more pedestrianized city streets, allow for more opportunities to generate revenue to fund the maintenance of the newly created public spaces, and create a single concession agreement that encompasses the total proposed concession area. To give a better idea of how the DOT intends to build out the proposed concession area extension, here on the left is a photo of a current intersection in the proposed boundary at Broadway and East 21st Street. On the right is a side-by-side section of the concession area that goes from 27th Street to the south to West 33rd Street in the north. The left section shows the interim treatment, while the right is a concept of the capital plan, which includes bike lane bump outs, pedestrian walkways, and potential concession seating areas. I'll show a zoomed-in example section to highlight the finer detail of the proposed street plan. Here's a closer look at the section of Broadway between 26th and 27th Streets. You can see how the concession would propose to grant seating space in front of the businesses while widening the pedestrian walkways and centering bike paths. I'm going to walk through some types of concessions in the next few slides. They're both in practice in the current space, as well as other areas of the city that could be scaled up and located within the proposed expanded Flatiron Nomad concession boundary. This is an existing pedestrian plaza, currently within the 38,500 square feet of existing concession area at the corner of Broadway and 23rd Street, looking north with Madison Square Park directly to the east. Here on the left is a plaza kiosk, which would be considered a sub-concession, and on the right is a short-term concession serving a commercial partner event. Here are a few examples of commercial food concessions. And here's an example that is concession use across from Grand Central that is dedicated to extra seating for a restaurant at Pershing Square. The last is a sub-concession used for public art installations. In summary, the Department of Transportation seeks the approval of a major concession in collaboration with the Flatiron Nomad Partnership to allow for revenue-generating concessions within a newly expanded boundary of 162,000 square feet along Broadway between East 19th and West 31st Streets. The role of the CPC in this application will be to determine whether the major concession is in the public interest, considering land use implications of this application, as well as the general appropriateness of the proposed use of the space and land that is in the public trust. Thank you, and I'm happy to now take any questions.
Thanks, Dylan. So fundamentally here, this is it's a proposal to allow DOT to enter into contractual agreements to allow for revenue-generating opportunities in this roughly 162,000 square foot area. Is that right?
That's correct.
So when the commission is looking at the question of a major concession and thinking about in the public interest, appropriate use of city-owned land, land use implications, et cetera, we're not considering a block-by-block post-design concept. We are considering would it be appropriate in this stretch to enable our sister agency the opportunity to use its discretion to generate some revenue from private sources. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So we should be thinking about the area writ large as opposed to one particular block and saying, oh, yes, we believe that 27th Street would be good or 28th Street would be bad. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, I got it. Okay. Thank you. Okay, let me see if there are comments. Commissioner Cerullo?
Two quick questions. Thank you. I guess this is more about the program than it is about the application, but given that Times Square was granted their major concession, which we were involved in, and all exciting stuff, and there is a thread here for the Broadway vision, are all the agreements identical? And we're just approving what is now sort of a roadmap, lack of a better, no pun intended, or is each one different or will be different as different applicants come forward for their section, let's say, Union Square and 34th and Garment, and how is it being threaded together? Will there be a standardization of the agreements in some way, or will they each be unique in their own way so that as you move from one neighborhood to another, you might have completely different rules and regulations?
Well, I think that part of that is definitely a good question for DOT about the FCRC process.
Okay.
Once they're granted the major concession, because I think that's kind of, a big backbone of the deal that kind of is outside of our vision on this, but in terms of the structure for each major concession where, you have a bid partner, obviously, who works with DOT to approve various concessions and sub-concessions. I think DOT simply being involved in all of them and, helping to provide a set of kind of standards around concession, sub-concession activity will by default create a degree of continuity, but it is to some degree, each individual bids concession, sub-concession process. But I think we made pretty strong note of, with the Times Square major concession, that there were genuine concerns and considerations about how do some of these structures relate to, the aesthetics of of that particular corridor. And to a degree, each portion of the Broadway vision has its own kind of character. And so I think the idea is for it to be responsive to it. So, from an FCRC perspective, definitely a good question for DOT at the public hearing.
Okay.
And I think also, they might be able to provide a little bit more nuanced insight about what's the process actually like on the ground working with the bids in terms of helping to ensure, their standards are met. Especially the plaza design standards apply here. I think, though, again, materiality of concessions themselves, right? That's an open question, but the goal is to maintain something that relates well to its surroundings.
And I'll make a note of that for when the public hearing. I understand standardization, but I also think that our neighborhoods are unique and they have different DNA, and that's one of the benefits of having organizations like BIDS kind of run the neighborhood because they get it. So I hate to see a sort of broad-brushed version of this because each neighborhood and the stakeholders in each neighborhood may have very different takes on what they would want to provide. I will say, though, that the idea, and this is not a question for city planning, but just a question in this area as we move to these major concessions, the idea of ensuring that language for liability and indemnification of things that are really the city's responsibility and not the partners, absent gross negligence or something like that by a partner, should really be addressed in. And I know that was a big issue for Times Square, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. The very last question I have is that I realize that by definition, the space can't be more than, the private enterprise can't be more than 50% of the overall pedestrian plaza spaces. I may not be articulating that exactly right, but it was twice in there about under the definition. The private concession can't be more than 50% of the overall space. Who gets to decide if you're in a corridor? And one of the successes of this before this process in Flatiron was that they were permitted through another agreement, even if temporary, to have their restaurants have space that went out into the public realm. And you might have a corridor with 4 different restaurants that want to benefit from this, even if it's under a different theory here in a subconcession. Who decides that this do the rules identify that if your space is 10, your facade, your frontage is 20 feet wide, you can only have 20 feet wide into the street? Or can one business on a block come in and request 50% of the space, which sort of rules out everyone else's ability to do it?
I don't believe there are any hard and fast rules about this. This is a DOT question for sure, and how they work with their partners, in terms of the actual concession agreements. I think it's a very good question. We have just generally been told that, again, it's a close collaboration between the bid partner and DOT to make sure that it works with, again, there's a strong vision for the space as part of Broadway Vision. There's been a lot of community outreach. I think, their goal is not to see, certain blocks of it oversaturated or maybe one proprietor taking something over.
Yeah.
But, there are certain, pedestrian plaza areas that are might be subject to like an event per se where, you know, a single entity like obviously takes over.
Yeah, a temporary setup.
Yeah,
I'm thinking more permanently, if there was a permanent, if the bid partner is more in, I don't want to use the word control, but it is more involved in that, then I have less concern about if individual applications can go directly to the city, which will lose the ability for there to be a planning of the area.
My understanding is that everything goes first through the bid, and the DOT is like technically has like, you know, this like say over it, but like the bid is the one doing the contracting and subcontracting.
Thank you.
But like it's a good question for both Flatiron Nomad and DOT.
Appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Benjamin.
Quick question. Pardon my ignorance, but is the Flatiron Nomad partnership the same membership as the bid?
Yes, that's correct.
And it is
the bid.
Required to be so, or is it just convenient to be so?
I'm trying to think about any outlier cases where we had like a major concession. There was one for like the Red Hook ball fields in like the 80s or 90s or something, but I don't think there's like a bid associated with that. But in this case for DOT space, I believe there does have to be a bid. It's required to have a bid as a partner in this because again, the bid is the one who is utilizing the concession space, and the proceeds of it are strictly going into the maintenance of the space, you know, because they're expanding their activities in the public realm, public right of way. So,
well, maintenance and special, they can also sponsor special events, and it's not just maintenance.
Oh, sorry, it's not just what?
Maintenance. It's also special events or statuary or art or concerts.
Oh, I meant the proceeds from all that are supposed to go strictly into the maintenance of the space, you know, because they're making, like, you know, somebody's making money off of it, and the bid as an intermediary is responsible for facilitating, and so the proceeds of that commercial activity go into the maintenance of the space to make sure.
And the books will be kept separate for that and for the bid?
Yeah, I would assume so. That's a good question. For the bid at public hearing will be part of the their co-applicants, so they'll be up here on the stand about how that's managed, but like...
Because there are activities, obviously, that the bid can do that the partnership may not be able to do.
Well, the partnership is the bid. That's their one.
Right, they have the same membership, but are they the same legal entity?
Unless there's something very LLC, LLP about it, I would assume they're the same, you know.
Then why call it the partnership if it's just a bid?
I mean, 34th Street Partnership, you know, it's just some of them, it's a branding, I think. I don't know. I mean, Grand Central Partnership?
That's their name. We don't refer to ourselves. We say we're a bid, but we don't call ourselves the Grand Central bid.
Hold on a sec. Do you want to say that into the microphone there, Commissioner Cerullo?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just saying that there could be two entities. I don't know enough. I can't really speak for Flatiron, but most have two entities, right? There's the not-for-profit entity, and then there's the District Management Association entity, which does most of the contracting. But you refer to this combined these two organizations, which have generally mirror images of their members and boards, as bids, but their name may not have the word bid in it. We are business improvement districts, but we're the Grand Central Partnership. We're referred to as the partnership. We don't separate those names. So whoever the legal contracting entity would be for the Flatiron Nomad Partnership would be the one that would be engaged in the legality. They may just be on a presentation calling it the partnership, but only the legal entity who could enter into contracts would be able to enter into the contract. That's separate from the management company that maybe is just the staff.
Right, and thank you for clarifying that. We have a simple understanding of partnership and bid activities and the structure, so we'll make sure to have the right folks there from the partnership.
Because I can't speak, I don't know Flatiron enough, so I'm not speaking for that entity, but it's not uncommon in the world.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Benjamin, did you?
And my last question has to do with Dan's first comment, which is the areas that are included. And I just wondered, this isn't just the plazas. There's some places like on the north side of 25th Street, between Broadway and 5th, the south side. Where and why did you include, if you look at the map, streets that don't have plaza, that aren't a plaza? Is that just to get continuity, or what is the reason for that? And since it's a functioning street, why could this partnership decide to put tables and chairs and close the street?
I mean, I think that if there are any closures that aren't kind of outlined in the function of these streets when they're capitally built out, because some might become shared streets, some might become pedestrian plazas in the final design. But like, let's take like a shared street, right, where vehicular traffic is technically permitted, a block like that. It's possible to get permission between both the partnership applying to and with DOT to do a temporary closure of the street for, you know, tables and chairs out there. I think about like Vanderbilt Ave in Brooklyn, for example, is one where sometimes, you know, there's tables and chairs in the vehicular lanes and then sometimes there's through traffic. So DOT has a process for monitoring that. So I don't think the bid could do anything like that unilaterally whatsoever. That would have to go through DOT.
But we were approving, when this comes back to us, we would be approving the possibility that when it comes to actual through streets, that the street could be closed in the future in order to accommodate the partnership's program.
I mean, I think DOT can speak to the nuance. My understanding is if there's any like closures of streets that are open, you know, even under their improved capital conditions, like vehicular traffic, that like would be temporary and would require DOT oversight the way that any kind of closure, like even like a block party, requires going through like SAPO, for example. So I don't think that my understanding is that granting the major concession wouldn't allow the bid to unilaterally close off a street that is supposed to be open to vehicular traffic. If that's...
But why...
What?
You may not be the right people to answer this, but why include those streets?
Well,
if you go back to the last map you had, where you can see that on 25th Street, where there is no plaza, you're showing it as included on the north side of the street as well as the south side, and on 24th Street.
What's the map of the capital project? Let's take a look. This is just like a sample of the capital plan and concept on the right. I mean, again, it's to encompass like that north side of, or the 25th Street. I don't have the full map in front of me right now, but it's entirely possible that it will look like something on the right-hand side where there might be an extended public realm, you know, a sidewalk widening, something that looks big like the picture on the left, although it's obviously a Broadway, where then there becomes, you know, additional space that could be used for concession area, were it like, you know, approved by the partnership. So I think the goal is to have a area of coverage that aligns with what they're actually, you know, physically improving in the future. Right now is an interim treatment. So my understanding is they're not trying to include any area that doesn't already have some degree of pedestrian improvements either in the works or kind of already in there in interim treatments.
Well, if you could, when next they're back here, if you could let them know, I'd like to know what the public improvements proposed are for any of the streets where the whole street that currently has traffic is included as part of this.
Understood. And I can't imagine, you know, SAPO allowing like a closure of 23rd or 25th Street fully.
Certainly not 23rd, but 24th and 25th, I can.
Yeah, there's a good point about 24th as well. 25th. Yeah, okay, understood. Okay. We'll have them answer this. And again, I know that some of this is, it's 24th Street, there's a degree to which it's an interim plaza form, but it's a good question. DOT is going to be on hand to answer all of these kinds of design-related nuances and part of what their vision is, because they've been working on public engagement and planning and design and concepts, you know, and revisions to it for years at this point, so they know it far better than we do.
Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Osorio?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. This is this sounds like an exciting and very relevant conversation. in preparing for today, I was looking at some of the Vision Zero statistics, and community boards 4 and 5 score as at the highest, at the top of both injuries and fatalities. And so the first question that I had is, what are the issues? What is causing that? And to what extent is this sort of like decision, but more so the actual planning process behind sort of like these improvements allows us to be intentional in addressing them? So I think it's a larger question, but I just want to pose it as we begin thinking about the larger conversation that will start with this approval. I think that, but let me stop there and see and ask if there's any information that you can share right now, or how has this emerged in the discussion with DOT. I'm really interested in understanding that. It sounds like this is one of those hot spots, and we have an opportunity to do something about it.
We don't have any information at this time that's concrete from DOT. I think it's an excellent question for them at public hearing. I mean, we'd be speculating here, but, generally speaking, the drive to make Broadway, significantly more pedestrian friendly, and as a really, core kind of, if you will, north-south corridor, and bringing folks off of the avenues is, obviously there's a activation urban design component too, but I think, the goal would also be traffic calming measures and shared streets and the ability to roll out a lot of progressive urban design measures.
Is it possible, is there room for us to require that this is an explicit component in the conversation going forward? As we approve the concession and the subconcessions, is it possible to acknowledge the fact that this is a hotspot in terms of pedestrian safety, and require that this is addressed within the comprehensive long term of the plan?
To be rather candid about it, I think we would have to have a conversation with council about the degree to which that the findings, if you will, which are kind of not exactly findings,
sure,
right, from the rules of the City of New York, do speak to the appropriateness
sure,
for the use and appropriateness vis-a-vis land use in the area. And so we'd have to understand the scope of,
sure,
something that speaks to explicitly to pedestrian safety vis-a-vis, I guess, like a history of incidences as something that could fall under that. I mean, we'll happily explore that and let you know.
Thank you. Yeah, I would love to be part of, that discussion. I also just in maybe kind of like wrapping up, I also just think that this is such a terrific opportunity to implement the principles of good urban design that the department created in 2024. Obviously when you look at the map, there's so many and so different small kind of like places within that corridor. But I think that this is an opportunity to evaluate their performance, the existing conditions more broadly, and then be explicit about, requiring that DOT and the bid really engage in or create a public process to really think about that. So one question is has the department done anything that we could draw on or build on in terms of evaluating the performance of these spaces in terms of or in the context of the principles? Or is that something that you think we can consult or get some feedback in preparation for the hearing?
We could get the DOT side of that equation because they have done years and years and years of community outreach, and I'm sure very highly attuned and conscious thought to it, especially given that Vision Zero is a DOT initiative. We can ask for as much as possible in advance as to how the design that's been taking shape it has been responding
to your principles.
To good design principles, as well as maximizing pedestrian safety in light of this being a hot spot from a Vision Zero perspective. So we'll ask for them to not only come prepared to speak to it at the hearing, but we can maybe even get some info beforehand. As for our own urban design standards, we can discuss internally and see if there's any kind of has been some cross-pollination on this.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just a big fan of those principles. I use them in class, and I just feel that this is an opportunity to set them in motion.
Yeah, agreed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. Okay, this item is now certified. Thank you very much.
Great.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, let's move on to item 3.
The third item on our agenda is a certification of a zoning map and zoning text amendment in Queens Community District 4, and our presenter is Derek Jasmine.
All right, Derek, welcome.
Good afternoon, Commission. This is 4703 108th Street rezoning. This is a private application by 108 Realty Group, Inc., located at 4703 108th Street in Corona, Queens, Community District 4, for a zoning map amendment from an existing R6B zoning district to an R7X C24 zoning district, and a related zoning text amendment to Appendix F to establish a mandatory inclusionary housing area with Option 1. These actions would facilitate the development of a 13-story mixed-use building with approximately 119,500 total square feet, 119 total dwelling units, of which 30 would be income-restricted, 8,700 square feet of commercial space, 17,700 square feet of community facility space, and 45 total accessory parking spaces. So here's an aerial view facing north, overlooking Corona. The project area is located along 108th Street, which is a major north-south corridor and wide street that runs through the center of Corona, connecting to East Elmhurst to the north and Forest Hills to the south. The project area is located less than 1/2 mile from Flushing Meadows, and this proposal is located within the outer transit zone. The nearest subway stations are 103rd Street Corona Plaza Station and 111th Street stations, along both of which are along the 7 train, roughly 1/2 mile north of the project area. And 108th Street is also served by the Q23 bus running between Forest Hills and East Elmhurst. As seen here, the immediate surrounding area is characterized by a mix of land uses. Commercial uses are concentrated along 108th Street, while surrounding areas are primary residential consistent with the underlying R districts. In 1961, the project area was initially mapped with an R6 and was rezoned to R6B in 1989 under the Elmhurst South Corona rezoning. And here we go, zoom in a bit closer to the project area, consisting of the entire block front between 47th and 48th Avenues. The lot is applicant-owned and currently improved with 2 auto repair shops and 1 used car dealership, all of which are operating out of 1 single-story building. Here's a view of 108th Street looking south from the intersection of 47th Avenue with the development site located on the left. Here's a view of the surrounding neighborhood at the intersection of 108th Street and 48th Avenue, facing southwest. The development site is located directly behind this photo. And here is another view of 108th Street, this time facing north from 48th Avenue with the project area located on the right. So these proposed actions would facilitate the development of a 13-story mixed-use building with 119 total dwelling units, of which 30 would be income restricted, built to a max FAR of 6, 8,700 square feet of commercial space, 17,700 square feet of community facility space, and 45 accessory parking spaces. The community facility portion would consist of a community center containing an indoor soccer training facility, as well as providing other community services, including childcare, and would be operated by Common Point Queens, which is a nonprofit based in Queens that providing a variety of community services throughout the borough. And entrances to this facility would be situated on 108th Street, as well as 47th Avenue. Residential entrance would be situated at 48th Avenue, along with a parking entrance to the cellar accessible via an existing curb cut. And commercial entrances would be situated on both 47th and 48th Avenues. So to facilitate the proposed development, the applicant proposes a zoning map amendment from an R6B to an R7X C24 zoning district, as well as a zoning text amendment to map MIH option 1. The existing R6B zoning district allows a max base height of 45 feet, max building height of 65 feet. The max residential FAR for qualified housing is 2.4, and a max of FAR of 2 for community facility uses. The max residential FAR increases from 2.4 to 6 under R7X. The community facility FAR increases from 2 to 5. and the C24 overlay will allow a maximum commercial FAR of 2. So MIH option 1 requires that 25% of the total residential floor area be income restricted at an average of 60% AMI. And this application is subject to a racial equity report since it seeks an approval of an increase in permitted residential floor area of at least 50,000 square feet. Between 2019 and 2023, the median household income in Community District 4 was approximately $69,500 annually, which is less than estimates for Queens and New York City. The estimated monthly rent of income-restricted units for households between 40 and 80% AMI ranges from $1,220 a month for a studio up to $2,920 a month for a 2-bedroom. The estimated average income for households earning between 40 and 80% AMI range from $45,400 annually for a 1-person household up to $129,600 for a 4-person household. And the applicant is proposing 25% of the units would be income restricted at an average of 60% AMI in line with MIH option 1. The project area is located within the Elmhurst and Corona Puma, in which approximately 37% identified as Asian non-Hispanic, 4% identified as Black non-Hispanic, 52% identified as Hispanic or Latino of any race, and 5% identified as white non-Hispanic. And between 2010 and 2020, the total population in this area increased 5%, which is slightly lower than the 8% growth seen at Queens and New York City levels. Asian non-Hispanic and Hispanic Latino populations saw increases during this time, while Black non-Hispanic and white non-Hispanic populations saw decreases during this time. So in summary, the applicant is proposing a zoning map amendment from an existing R6B district to an R7X C24 zoning district and related zoning text amendment to Appendix F to establish MIH with option 1, which would facilitate the development of a new 13-story mixed-use building containing 119,500 total square feet, 119 total dwelling units, of which 30 would be income restricted, 8,700 square feet of ground floor retail, 17,700 square feet of community facility space operated by Common Point Queens, and 45 total accessory parking spaces. And that concludes my presentation.
Great, thank you. Let me see if there are any questions. Commissioner Osorio, Commissioner Mann.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks so much for the presentation. When we see this again, it would be great to understand a little bit again, what is the rationale that is leading us to the specific MIH configuration in the context of the race equity report? Just in looking at some of the numbers, 23.4% of the population here is extremely low income, and almost 19% is very low income. Combined, we're talking about a third or plus of the population, and so how does that compare to the affordability levels that we're proposing? Just to understand a little bit the gap and also discuss what could be possible. I know that MIH is MIH, but I think that is our responsibility to just show where there could be significant gaps in that regard and see what we can do about it in neighborhoods like this one, in communities like this one that really, really need as much deeper affordability as we can get.
Yes, thank you. The applicant will be able to speak more to that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Mann.
Yeah, this might not be a question for this discussion, but just as the charter changes start to come into effect, and applicants think about what's the right level of density to seek as part of these applications, and which ones have the full ULURP and which have ELURP. I don't know if there's a better way to pronounce that. This is a R6B to R7X, which is more than the 30% increase in residential density, right?
Correct.
So if they're going for less than that increase in R7A, I think might get them there, but I'm not 100% sure about that. If the commission modifies an application to less than 30%, that still would require council review, I assume. I'm just trying to make sure I'm clear on the nuances there.
I'm not sure how that would apply to modifications.
Yeah, that's what I was just wondering.
But that's a good question.
Just a bit of maybe an academic question, not relevant, but just trying to understand how that would play out.
Commissioner, are you asking if the commission were to modify this application to something less than an R7X 7X, would it require, what was your?
That's what I was just trying to parse a little bit there, because I was thinking in my head, hey, I wonder what they were thinking about council review. They went for more than 30%. Did they think about the ELERP question? So I was just curious if we modify the density increase to below the charter threshold, does that still have, does that make sense?
Yes.
Or does it matter only that the application was certified at that additional density, and that's?
Yes, so we should go back and check the precise designation. It might have affected R1 to R5 only, but I don't remember. Actually, we should double check. You may be right. We'll double check what the precise designation was on the ELERP as to whether it would have affected R6B. Looks like we may have help in here. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, we can, sorry, Lucia Cafuccio, Central Queens Team Lead. I was going to say the Queen's Office can just follow up on that generally, and we can talk to council.
We'll figure it out.
And I just wanted to specify also, like, this project was in our pipeline before ELERP was passed, so, like, it wasn't, we didn't, like, review it for that threshold when this came to us, but we can follow up internally at our department. Get the commission.
We'll come back to you. I think it's a good question.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, other questions? Okay, thank you. This item certified. Thank you, Dara.
Great, thank you so much.
The fourth item on our agenda is a certification of site selection acquisitions in Queens Community District 2, and our presenter is Fagala Leshner.
Welcome.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, welcome. Go right ahead.
Okay. Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is an application by the New York City Department of Parks and Recreation and the New York City Department of Citywide Administrative Services for acquisition and site selection of multiple privately owned sites for potential future park developments in Queens Community District 2. This is the third application in a series of Walk to Park applications which aim to increase the feasibility and efficiency of acquiring park sites in underserved neighborhoods and to ultimately close the Walk to Park gap citywide. This application was submitted in accordance to previously approved Walk to Park applications in Brooklyn CD5 and Queens CD3, which were adopted by the City Council on December 4th, 2025, with the CPC's modifications. This commission approved previous Walk to Park applications with a prioritization system for primary sites and a modification to the secondary sites criteria, both of which have been incorporated into this application. As a reminder, a Walk to a Park is generally defined as a half-mile walking distance to entrances of parks over 6 acres and a quarter-mile walking distance to entrances of parks under 6 acres. Parks aims to close gap areas and promote more equitable access to public open space citywide by seeking acquisition authority for a universe of sites that meet certain criteria within geographically defined areas. Parks will have already obtained acquisition authority for sites when they become available for sale, thereby saving time and resources. Giving parks more options for sites means they have a higher chance of actually purchasing one, as not all sites will become available for sale to be pursued for acquisition. This allows parks to more easily purchase from willing sellers, which is their intent. As a reminder, the acquisition approval would not affect the property's title in any way, including ability to sell to another party, develop, or rezone. Additionally, with the acquisition approval for the included sites, parks would have the authority to acquire a portion of a site. This is particularly relevant on larger lots where property owners may choose to sell a portion of their site to parks for the development of a city park. Queens Community District 2 includes the neighborhoods of Sunnyside, Woodside, and Long Island City. CD2 is primarily City Council District 26, represented by Julie Wan, and partially within City Council District 25, represented by Shekhar Krishnan. Parks identified the most underserved community districts for Walk to Park acquisition applications based on a variety of factors, including the number of people in each community district living further than a walk to the park, the district's open space ratio, and the poverty rate. CD2 has been selected for this batch acquisition approach for a variety of reasons. First, CD2's population has grown significantly, rising 25% over 2 decades to more than 137,000 residents, making it one of the densest districts in the borough with over 44,000 people per square mile. Community District 2 has one of the lowest open space ratios across the city, at just 0.38 acres of public open space per 1,000 residents. Over 26,000 residents of CD2 lack walkable access to parks today. While there are several large cemeteries in the community district, these cemeteries do not function as publicly accessible open space and therefore do not add to the accessibility of open space for Queens Community District 2 residents. Recent development trends suggest that CD2's population will continue growing at a faster rate than the rest of the city, as the western portion of the community district leads the city in new housing unit completions. As a reminder, the primary site criteria are as follows. First, the site must be privately owned and vacant. Second, the site must be at least 5,000 square feet. Third, there cannot be any DOB permits for the site's development. And fourth, Parks deemed the site suitable for park development through site visit inspections. As with the previously approved Walk to Park applications, the Parks Commissioner will need to affirm after ULURP approval that it has made a certain number of attempts to acquire primary sites before pursuing the acquisition of secondary sites. Due to the scarcity of primary sites available for sale, that are also suitable for park development, Parks establish criteria to identify secondary sites that are not vacant, but are significantly underbuilt under the current zoning, which may indicate potential for redevelopment or likelihood of the property becoming available for sale. First, the site must be privately owned and currently used for commercial, office, industrial, manufacturing, transportation, utilities, or public facility. Second, the site must be currently built to 50% or less of its maximum allowable FAR based on its current zoning. Third, the site must reduce a walk to a park gap area. Fourth, the site is at least 5,000 square feet. Fifth, there are no active DOB permits. Sixth, Park deemed the site suitable for park development. And seventh, any building that deemed suitable for park development, any buildings on the site were constructed or approved prior to 2011. The last criterion was added by the CPC in the last round of walk to park applications. As a reminder, Parks envisions programming the acquired sites with one of the following three design options, depending on the size of the site. Design option 1 would create a passive open space on smaller lots between 5,000 and 10,000 square feet. Design option 2 would generate a larger park with more active recreational amenities, such as larger playgrounds and sports courts on medium-sized lots between 10,000 and 25,000 square feet. Design option 3 would create larger amounts of active recreation amenities on lots larger than 25,000 square feet. The eventual programming of these sites will be determined after community input at the time of acquisition, which is Parks' typical process. In Community District 2, we'll review primary and secondary sites that meet the criteria for proposed park expansion. You can follow along using the site list in your briefing package. We'll start with primary sites that are vacant lots located primarily in Long Island City, an area that's expected to grow significantly, and Woodside, an underserved area currently lacking access to parks. Primary Site 1 is a 41,000 square foot vacant lot assemblage located on 47th Ave between 5th Street and Vernon Boulevard, in an M13A R7X zoning district, next to newer residential developments and light manufacturing buildings in Long Island City. This is a larger site that could be developed with design option 3. Primary Site 2 is a 16,000 square foot vacant lot located on 45th Road between Vernon Boulevard and 11th Street, in an M12A R6A zoning district, next to vacant lots, light industrial manufacturing buildings in Long Island City. This is a medium-sized lot that could be developed with design option 2. Primary Site 3 is a 34,000 square foot vacant lot located on 43rd Ave between 23rd Street and 24th Street, in an M16 R10 zoning district next to 4 to 5 story office buildings in Long Island City. This is a larger site that could be developed with design option 3. Primary Site 4 is an approximately 14,000 square foot portion of a lot located at the mid-block of 43rd Ave between 12th and 13th Street in an M14A zoning district adjacent to 2 to 6 story office and manufacturing buildings in Long Island City. This portion of a lot currently serves as a gated open space for the nearby Rolex Civic Center building and is adjacent to the building's rear parking lot. This is a mid-sized site that could be developed with design option 2. Primary Site 5 is a 7,200 square foot vacant lot assemblage located at the intersection of 38th Ave and 56th Street in an M11 zoning district next to railroad tracks, a parking facility, and one-story residential buildings in Woodside. This is a smaller site that could be developed with design option 1. Primary Site 6 is a 7,700 square foot vacant lot located on 70th Street at the mid-block between 41st Ave and the BQE, in an R5D zoning district adjacent to 1 to 6 story residential buildings in Woodside. This is a smaller lot that could be developed to design option 1. The seventh and last primary site is a 5,000 square foot vacant lot located on 61st Street between Woodside Ave and 43rd Ave, in an R6B zoning district next to 2 to 6 story residential buildings and a church in Woodside. The site is owned by the adjacent church, but is currently fenced off and not being used. This is a smaller site that could be developed with design option 1. Under the secondary site criteria, Parks has identified 30 sites for acquisition and site selection that are non-vacant and underbuilt. These sites meet the criteria for proposed park expansion in underserved areas lacking access to parks. These sites are primarily located in Sunnyside, Blissville, Woodside, and West Maspeth. Secondary Site 1 is a 9,000 square foot lot currently occupied by a vacant single-story commercial building on the corner of 46th Street and Greenpoint Ave in an R6A C14 zoning district next to 2 to 8-story mixed-use buildings in Sunnyside. This is a smaller site that could be developed with design option 1. Secondary Site 2 is a 20,000 square foot lot currently serving as a gas station located at the intersection of Queens Boulevard and 39th Street in an M14 zoning district next to 1-story commercial buildings and 5-story residential buildings in Sunnyside. This is a mid-sized site that could be developed with design option 2. Secondary Site 3 is a 16,000 square foot lot currently a 1-story car rental business located on Thompson Ave in an M14 zoning district adjacent to numerous 1 to 3-story commercial, office, and community facility buildings in Sunnyside. This is a mid-sized site that could be developed with design option 2. On the same block, Site 4 is a 6,300 square foot lot currently a car sales showroom located at the intersection of Thompson Ave and Skillman Ave in an M14 zone district adjacent to commercial, office, and community facility buildings in Sunnyside. On the same block, Secondary Site 5 is a 21,000 square foot lot, currently a vacant car showroom located at the intersection of Skillman Ave and Queens Boulevard, located in an M14 zoning district in Sunnyside. This is a mid-sized site that could be developed with design option 2. Across Queens Boulevard, Secondary Site 6 is a 14,000 square foot lot, currently a gas station with retail store, located at the intersection of Skillman Ave and Queens Boulevard in an M14 zoning district across from train tracks and adjacent to car showrooms, and a 3-story industrial factory building in Sunnyside. This is a mid-sized site that could be developed with design option 2. Moving now to the neighborhood of Blissville, Secondary Site 7 is a 12,500 square foot lot, currently a 1-story industrial warehouse building, located at the intersection of Star Ave and 34th Street, in an M13 zoning district surrounded by 1 to 3-story industrial businesses and warehouses. This is a mid-sized site that could be developed with design option 2. On the same block, Site 8 is a 20,000 square foot lot, currently a 1-story industrial warehouse located at the intersection of Star Ave and 31st Place, in an M13 zoning district adjacent to 1 to 3-story industrial buildings and warehouses. This is a mid-sized site that could be developed with design option 2. On the same block, Site 9 is a 10,000 square foot lot currently occupied by a 1-story warehouse building located on 34th Street in an M13 zoning district next to 1 to 3-story industrial buildings, warehouses, and a 20-story hotel. This is a mid-sized site that could be developed with design option 2. Also in Blissville, Site 10 is an 8,000 square foot lot currently occupied by a gas station at the intersection of Borden Ave and 34th Street in an M11 zoning district adjacent to 1 to 2-story industrial buildings, office buildings, and 2 to 3-story residential buildings. This is a smaller site that could be developed with design option 1. Site 11 is a 7,500 square foot lot, currently a gated parking facility on 37th Street across from Cavalry Cemetery in an M11 zoning district adjacent to 1-story industrial and 2 to 3-story residential buildings, also in Blissville. This is a smaller site that could be developed with design option 1. The following several sites are in Woodside between Broadway and Northern Boulevard. Site 12 is a 20,000 square foot lot, currently a car dealership located in an M11 zoning district between Broadway and Northern Boulevard adjacent to auto repair businesses in 1 to 2-story commercial and industrial buildings. This is a larger site that could be developed with design option 3. On the corner of Northern Boulevard and 57th Street, Site 13 is a 9,500 square foot lot, currently part of a car dealership located in an M11 zoning district adjacent to repair businesses and 1 to 2-story commercial and industrial businesses. This is a smaller lot that could be developed with design option 1. On Broadway between 57th Street and 58th Street, Site 14 is a 15,000 square foot lot, currently a moving supply facility located in R5 and M11 zoning districts adjacent to 2-story residential buildings and across the street from an auto repair business in 1 to 2-story commercial buildings. This is a mid-sized site that could be developed, design option 2. On the same block to the north, Site 15 is a 9,500 square foot lot, currently a part of a car dealership located in an M11 zoning district at the intersection of Northern Boulevard and 58th Street, adjacent to 2-story residential buildings and across the street from several auto repair businesses in 1 to 2-story commercial buildings. This is a corner lot that could be developed to design option 1. On the corner of Northern Boulevard and 61st Street, Site 16 is a 10,000 square foot lot, currently a used car dealership storage lot located in an R5 zoning district adjacent to 2 to 3-story residential buildings, auto-oriented commercial uses, and 1 to 2-story commercial buildings. This is a corner lot that could be developed with design option 1. On Broadway between 56th Street and 57th Street, Site 17 is a 7,000 square foot lot, currently a gas station with auto repair located in M11 and R5 zoning districts adjacent to numerous 2-story residential buildings and 1 to 2 commercial buildings across the street. This is a smaller site that could be developed with design option 1. Site 18, 19, and 20 are in Woodside also, located on Queens Boulevard across from Calvary Cemetery. Site 18 is a 16,000 square foot lot, currently a 1-story commercial building in an R7X C23 zoning district at the intersection of Queens Boulevard and 57th Street, adjacent to 2-story residential buildings. This is a mid-sized site that could be developed with design option 2. On the corner of Queens Boulevard and 57th Street, Site 19 is a 6,500 square foot lot, currently a 1-story auto repair business located in an R7X C23 zoning district adjacent to 2-story residential buildings. This is a smaller site that could be developed with design option 1. On the corner of Queens Boulevard and 58th Street, Site 20 is an 11,000 square foot lot, currently occupied by a 1-story fast food restaurant located in an R7X C23 zoning district adjacent to 2 to 3-story residential buildings. This is a mid-sized site that could be developed with design option 2. Also in Woodside, further east, on the corner of 69th Street and Queens Boulevard, Site 29 is a 9,000 square foot lot, which is a recently closed gas station located in an R7X C23 zoning district adjacent to 2 to 3-story residential buildings. This is a smaller lot that could be developed with design option 1. On Queens Boulevard between 48th and 49th Street and Sunnyside, Site 22 is a 19,000 square foot lot, currently an auto repair parts and services store located in a C44A zoning district adjacent to 2 to 5-story residential buildings and across from Saba Park. This is a mid-sized site that could be developed with design option 2. Moving now to Maspeth, Site 23 is a 6,000 square foot lot, currently a parking lot located in an M11 zoning district on Garfield Ave, adjacent to 2-story residential buildings and 1 to 2-story industrial uses. This is a smaller site that could be developed with design option 1. At the intersection of Queens Boulevard, 72nd Street, and 47th Ave, Site 24 is a 20,000 square foot lot, currently a parking lot located in R7X C23 zoning district, adjacent to a car rental company, 9 to 12-story residential buildings, and across from a school. This is a mid-sized site that could be developed with design option 2. In Maspeth on 46th Street between 53rd and 54th Ave, Site 25 is a 7,500 square foot lot, currently a 1-story industrial warehouse with parking facilities located in an M21 zoning district adjacent to 2 to 3-story residential buildings and industrial uses. This is a smaller site that could be developed with design option 1. On the same block, Site 26 is a 5,000 square foot lot, currently a 1-story industrial warehouse with parking facilities located in an M21 zoning district adjacent to 1-story industrial buildings. This is a smaller site that could be developed with design option 1. Sorry, these are the older slides. Also in Maspeth on 48th Street between 53rd Street and 54th Ave, Site 28 is a 17,500 square foot lot, currently a 3-story industrial building in an M21 zoning district adjacent to parking facilities and a 1 to 2-story industrial buildings. This is a larger site that could be developed with design option 3. Across the street on the corner of 54th Ave and 48th Street, Site 29 is a Site 29 is a 37,000 square foot lot, currently a parking lot located in M21 zoning district adjacent to 1 to 2 story industrial buildings. This is a larger site that could be developed with design option 3. The final secondary site, Site 30, is a 40,000 square foot lot, currently a parking facility located in M21 zoning district on 50th Street and 54th Road across from Cavalry Cemetery, adjacent to 1 to 3 story industrial buildings in Maspeth. This is a larger site that could be developed with design option 3. Parks will follow the same acquisition process as the previously approved Walk to Parks application. Pursuant to Parks' usual processes, when acquiring a site, they will notify the council member, community board, and the community board of their intention to acquire a site, submit a capital budget proposal to the Office of Management and Budget, the comptroller, and the borough president. Sites must also continue to meet each of the primary and secondary site criteria at the time of acquisition, which will be verified by the law department according to the CPC resolution. As part of the site selection action, Parks will provide more detailed descriptions about the proposed use, types of park activities, and amenities in the required Fair Share Article 9 letter. After a site is acquired, Parks process includes in-depth site studies, a community input meeting with stakeholders such as the community board, electeds, neighborhood groups, and members of the public to determine priorities and park elements, which all inform conceptual design. A further developed schematic design that is shown to the community board and either the Landmark Preservation Committee or the Public Design Commission, and permitting and construction processes. The acquisition authority for these sites would sunset after the Walk to the Park gap is closed in that community district or after 10 years, whichever is sooner. After the 10 years have lapsed, Parks would have the option to submit a new ULURP application to renew its acquisition authority if there is still a demonstrated need in that community district. During public review for previous Walk to Park applications, the Commission also adopted a process for prioritizing primary sites, which has been included in this application. Parks will report in writing to the CPC when they have acquired sites and will not proceed to the acquisition of secondary sites prior to certifying to the Commission that they were not able to acquire primary sites. In conclusion, this is an application by the Department of Parks and Recreation and the New York City Department of Citywide Administrative Services for acquisition and site selection of multiple privately owned sites for potential future park developments in Queens Community District 2. This application, in a series of Walk to Park applications, will increase the feasibility and efficiency of acquiring park sites in underserved neighborhoods and ultimately work to close the Walk to Park gap citywide. Today, CD2 is a community district with a very low open space ratio where over 26,000 residents live outside of a walk-to park. As CD2 continues to produce more housing, the need for high-quality public open space will grow. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you very much for a lot of information. Appreciate it. We're going to start with Commissioner Benjamin.
Hi. I have a number of questions some of which I also asked during the last time when we saw the Brooklyn and Queens Walk to the Park. And I remain concerned about how we count, as a program-wide issue, how we count open space for these purposes. Open space, let's say Astoria Park, not all of the park is counted, as I understand it, as being within the open space. And some private open space, let's say at Ravenswood, is not counted as open space. So I would still continue to request that we look at all of the open space, however it is provided, if the public is allowed to use it within the open space in the Walk to Park open space ratios. I continue to have issues with those areas within these community boards that are 1- and 2-family homes where we don't count backyards. It seems to me that's open space that we're not getting a fair picture and ratio of what is available. Those are clearly only available to the families that live there, but it is available. And then one of the things that troubled me is how we are making decisions about Walk to Park open space versus land for housing. And in a number of these sites, P1, P2, P3, S22, and S24, there's a significant size of the site and a significant residential equivalency. P1 has an R7X equivalency, and it's 41,000 square feet. That's certainly enough to build a lot of affordable housing. If we're going to be acquiring sites, how do we make the decision whether we should acquire it for this open space or require it for a lot of affordable housing, since we're going to spend the money? And so in this particular one, there were 5 that were at or about 20,000 square feet, one of which was 33,000 square feet and is an R10. I mean, I think if we're going to acquire that, we should build. So how the decision is made about parks may see that this is appropriate for a park, but we may think this is appropriate for residential construction. And how Parks looks at that, I'd like to know, and how you would advise us to look at these trade-offs for these sites that we don't have a lot of sites for affordable housing in those areas either. And then that's not something you're going to answer right here, obviously, but the one that I would ask is, in the primary sites that you showed, none of them are within the pink area. They're all outside. And I understand Park says that if they're within a reasonable distance outside of the pink area, they can still be walked to parks. But all of the primary sites are outside of the pink area. The question is, were there no sites in the whole rest of the community board that qualified for primary sites? I don't understand the choices made here that we're being presented with. That's it for me. Sorry.
Great.
Beating a dead horse.
Great. There's a number of things that I think we can pick up more broadly, but that last question, though, you should definitely.
Yeah, of course. I'll start actually, with responding to the last question. So the primary sites are all outside of the walk to a park gap. And that is because the primary site criteria is that they don't have to be within a walk to a park gap or even outside. So part of why the primary sites are outside of the walk to a park gap speaks to the real dearth of availability of vacant sites in Queens Community District 2. A lot of Queens Community District 2 is very densely developed, and it's a very active housing market. And those were the sites that were vacant within the community district. So does that answer that last question?
Well, it does, except that they don't really fulfill the walk to park. I understand that that within the choices, we say that the walk to park site doesn't have to be within the guidelines of the walk to park program, but if it's close enough, we can do it anyway. But I guess that just makes not a lot of sense to me when the secondary sites are within the walk to park, and granted, they're not vacant, a number of them are parking lots, but it seems to me that they more appropriately address the program guidelines of.
Sorry, yes, they more appropriately
address the program
tech
guidelines.
Issue. Fagel is not able to advance the slide. Can you?
Is it fair to say that the rules are stricter for the primary sites in that they have to be vacant? Is that correct?
Yeah.
So it was a little more difficult, as I understand it, for parks to identify vacant sites that were within the walk to park official area. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So to Commissioner Benjamin's point, so it's easier to find the secondary sites because they can have something on them. So I think what the Commissioner is asking is, did the Parks Department survey the area within the walk to park boundaries for vacant sites that would have potentially been eligible and concluded that therefore there weren't any and therefore they had to go somewhere outside the boundaries. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, that is a fair statement.
Okay. I mean, I think that's what Commissioner Benjamin's asking. Is that what you're asking, Commissioner?
I mean, it just, as I said, I'm not going to beat a dead horse, but I understand what you're saying, but given where the areas most in need of a walk to park are, and given where the primary sites that we're going to acquire are, it just doesn't make sense to me. That's it. Okay.
Hi, Commissioner. I think we're just closing out this, but Colin Ryan, Western Queens Team Lead. Definitely noting your comments, and we can ask Park to do some follow-up on how these acquisitions might, help close those gaps, even if they aren't within one. And
whether there were no sites within the whole rest of the district,
correct. Yes, we can definitely make that request.
Or whether they eliminated those sites for other reasons.
Yes, yeah, we can pass that along, and just would love to underscore that this district has a very severely low open space ratio, which is also a consideration that Parks put into this application.
Yeah, I mean, I just look at the highway that somebody would have to cross to get to these other open spaces, which seems like such a barrier to people using them that it's not sensical.
We'll take this back to Parks. In terms of the question about parks versus housing, so a lot of the land in this application is suitable for multiple uses. It could be housing, could be parks. The sites that are getting acquisition approval do not need to be acquired in full. So a property owner can choose to sell off a portion of that site, and that portion could be a public park. Noting, of course, the potential for such large sites to make affordable housing, Parks talked to HPD and other city agencies to ensure that each of the sites included in this application were not being pursued by the city for another purpose, including affordable housing construction.
I understand that the city wasn't pursuing it before, but if we're saying now that there is money available, do we want to allocate that money for a park? I understand HPD doesn't have this in their budget, but we're talking about new budget money. And if we're going to put new budget money in, do we want to put it into this site for housing, or do we want to put it into this site for open space?
Lynn Zhang, Director of Queen's Office. Thank you. That's a really good question. I think, as both Colin and Fagala said, this has been such a challenging area in terms of the high density, the amount of new housing and residents that we're expecting here, and knowing that it already, there's an existing dearth of open space. This application is the attempt by the city to just cast a really wide net and to identify all the appropriate spaces that are good for parks. And noted your point that it could also be good for affordable housing. But at this juncture, I think we're just looking for the Commission's feedback and comment on whether this is good parkland. And we're not acquiring. We do not have funding at the moment to acquire all of these sites. But I think it gives us the ability to expand and have that conversation later, when we're able to negotiate across different owners and different properties. But as Fagala said, these sites that are appropriate for parks is also appropriate for housing. But I think at this juncture, we're trying to focus on this gap that has been around in this particular community district for quite some time.
And I would say I understand what Parks is doing. It's just that we're looking at a different picture of not just the needs for parks, but other things. And when I see an R10 that's 40,000 square feet that could have at least a 400,000 square foot building on it, I'm hard pressed in comparing the two, and maybe in future applications, parks may want to look at the zoning on these sites and talk about for us or someone the competition for those kinds of zone sites should an owner want to sell it.
I think your point is well taken. Yeah,
Thank you, Commissioner. Did you have other questions? Okay. We'll go to Commissioner Osorio. I will note that I would expect that a site that's zoned for an R10, that obviously is a much more expensive site for the Parks Department to potentially acquire as well, and they could develop their own site as housing at any time, with or without partnership from the city. But that will be a challenge for parks when negotiating any one of these sites. The higher the zoning, the more expensive it inevitably will end up being for the city. So I do think that ends up being a factor, whether it is one that's officially on our plate here or not. So, okay, Commissioner Osorio.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm going to try not to repeat, because I had a lot of the same questions in just to sort of like frame my questions to you. It feels like we are analyzing whether or not these properties are suitable for open space in and of themselves, without a context in terms of like, where is the need greater other than the walk to park kind of like areas that have been designated. I'm so glad that you brought up the open space ratio to 1,000 people, because if possible, I would love to see a map that indicates where these properties are in terms of census tracts, I guess, at this level, that are below the 2.5 standard, or places where there's been recent decisions to increase residential density, and that open space ratio is going to expect to, go up or down, depending on the situation, just for us to understand what's the context and have a little more clarity in terms of where do we need more parks, not just whether the park is suitable for open space or not. The second question has to do with, again, in my mind, this is yet another opportunity to understand not just how these individual properties can perform as open spaces, but what is the type of open space network that exists, and how can we qualitatively understand which ones should be prioritized, and be intentional. Again, if we conclude that on our, 7, 10 property would be required as open space, so that we can create an argument for it and really understand and justify the rationale for that. In saying that, I do understand that, the Department of Parks and Recreation criteria doesn't depend on us, right? They have their system, they created their two approaches to this. But I think that we should be a little bit more intentional in terms of really carving out the context and understand their priorities. Now, in speaking about the sites, the other map that it would be great if you can provide, I was able to track down some of them, but some of the proposed properties, especially in Maspeth, are within the Maspeth Industrial Business Zone. And I'm really concerned about that, because then, just as we were discussing with housing, we then create a little bit of another unintended sort of like conflict here. And why would we be creating open space within an industrial business zone when there was just an industrial plan released that is seeking opportunities to incentivize and grow industry in some of these places, and specifically within the IBCs? So, I know that some of these, there's a lot of gray areas in terms of some of these IBCs as determined by the plan, but I just generally think that we should anticipate these connections and kind of like provide the Department of Parks and Recreation with a clear perspective on not just whether the site is suitable, but whether it makes sense to create a plan in terms of a park, in terms of the context. Also, and I'll wrap up with this, just to begin to connect what the Department of Parks is trying to do, which I very much agree with what was said in terms of this being necessary, but we need to have a plan to be able to really address it. And so what I was going to say is maybe provide some guidance. I think the City Planning Commission could do that in terms of how to connect what Parks is doing with the Mayor's Office of Environmental Justice has laid out, which, as I understand, is the primary sort of like entity within city government leading where to close these gaps in terms of the deficit of open space and also the walk to park index.
We'll take those back to Parks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Come back to you.
Okay, other questions? Commissioner Rampersad.
Just one. I share the same concerns as Commissioner Benjamin and Commissioner Rosario. Out of all these sites, do you know how many have E-designations on them?
No, we can come back to you with that information.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other questions? Okay, thank you very much. This is certified. We know we'll pick this one up with the Parks Department when they come to us. So thank you all. Okay.
The fifth item on our agenda is a renewal of a special permit in Brooklyn Community District 2, and our presenter is Amrita Mahesh.
Hi, Amrita.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Go for the slides. Perfect. This is an application by 130 St. Felix Street, LLC, for the renewal of a special permit granted in October 2021 to facilitate a new 23-story, approximately 147,000 square foot mixed-use development, which would include approximately 140 dwelling units, of which 35 units would be income restricted pursuant to MIH. The proposed project is located within the southeastern part of downtown Brooklyn, just north of the Atlantic Terminal Transit Station, which is at the confluence of Atlantic Avenue, Flatbush Avenue, and 4th Avenue. There is a wide mix of building typologies in the surrounding area, particularly along the Flatbush Avenue corridor. There are a number of buildings exceeding 30 stories, and to the east and west of the project area are the Fort Greene and Boerum Hill neighborhoods, which are characterized by 3 to 4 story row houses and larger multi-story institutional uses. The Commission may recall recent rezonings in the area, which have facilitated several mixed-use high-rise developments, including 80 Flatbush and the 570 Fulton Street rezonings. The site is located within the Brooklyn Academy of Music Historic District and within the Brooklyn Cultural District, which includes numerous nearby arts and culture organizations. The site lies within the Special Downtown Brooklyn District, which establishes urban design guidelines and modified bulk regulations to support the continued growth of downtown Brooklyn as the borough's central business district. Areas to the north and south of the project area are mapped with mid to high density C6 commercial zoning districts. The areas to the east and west of the project site are generally mapped with mid-density residential districts. The project area was rezoned to C64 and C66 zoning districts in 2021. C64 districts allow up to 12 FAR for residential uses, up to 10 FAR for commercial and community facility uses, and C66 districts allow up to 12 FAR for residential uses and up to 15 FAR for commercial or community facility uses. The project area is located on Block 2111, which is bounded by Lafayette Avenue to the north, St. Felix Street to the east, Hanson Place to the south, and Ashland Place to the west. The project area covers roughly the southern half of the block and includes 3 lots. In blue, Lot 37 contains the Brooklyn Music School, which occupies 4 converted townhomes, and the site now has 12,500 square feet of community facility uses. It's a performance arts institution. In pink is Lot 40, the development site. This is a vacant lot that is currently used occasionally for private parking. And in yellow, Lot 7501, where the landmarked 41-story Williamsburg Savings Bank building is located. It totals approximately 325,000 square feet and was originally built as an office building. In 2007, much of the space was converted to residential use and is now known as 1 Hanson Place. There are nearly 200 residences plus about 50,000 square feet of commercial office and retail. The rest of the block is occupied by a church that's currently vacant on the corner of Hanson Place and Felix Street, and BAM's flagship Peter J. Sharp building, which fronts on Lafayette Avenue, and the BAM Fisher building, which fronts on Ashland Place. These house a variety of performance venues, practice studios, and instructional space. Here are some photographs of the project area. This is a view of Lot 40, the development site, as seen from St. Felix Street. This is another view looking north on St. Felix Street. Shown here are the 1860s era townhomes, which house the Brooklyn Music School. And this is a view of the project block from the corner of Hanson Place and St. Felix Street, looking north. The church seen here in the foreground is currently undergoing LPC review to facilitate an adaptive reuse mixed-use project under the existing as-of-right C64 zoning. And this is a view along Ashland Place at Flatbush Avenue. The Williamsburg Savings Bank is seen on the right. And lastly, this is a view along Ashland Place looking south. The applicant is requesting the first 3-year renewal of a previously approved bulk special permit. Such renewal may be granted if the CPC finds that the facts upon which the special permit were granted have not substantially changed. I'll now briefly summarize the bulk waivers granted under the original application, which was a special permit for modification of bulk regulations for certain buildings on irregular sites pursuant to ZR Section 101-82. The first waiver was for portions of the building that lie within the required rear yard equivalent. A waiver was granted to allow a 22-foot rear yard equivalent along St. Felix Street and a 4-foot to 20-foot rear yard equivalent along Ashland Place. The second bulk waiver granted was for a small inner court that would not meet the zoning required minimum area or dimensions. The proposed development would be built flush against the north wall of 1 Hanson Place, except for this recess shown in pink. A small court would be created as a result, and a waiver was granted for the reduced dimensions. The applicant was also granted a waiver for tower lot coverage above a height of 150 feet. The maximum tower lot coverage is 40% above a height of 150 feet. The existing savings bank tower has a lot coverage of 38%. With the addition of the proposed development, the tower lot coverage would increase to 54%, and a waiver was granted to allow for this condition. This application was referred out to Brooklyn Community Board 2 on December 3rd. The Community Board did not submit a recommendation. And that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. So questions on the renewal of the authorization of the special permit, Commissioner Benjamin.
The waiver for the court dimensions, if the special permit were not renewed, would the resulting building have to inset more to create the required courtyard? And number 2 part of that question is, do any of those windows in that courtyard, are any of them required windows for room count?
So I'll answer the second question first. I believe none of the windows in that recess area are windows for the legal windows. In terms of the first question, yes, it will create some constraints regardless. It's a very narrow portion of the through lot, and it may create an untenable sort of floor plate condition for the proposed development for the new building if the waiver was not to be granted. And it was already granted.
They're not legal windows, but are they windows that allow for a room currently?
I can take a closer look and get back to you regarding that.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Les, but if the waiver, if the renewal were not granted, is it fair to say that this building on St. Felix would not be able to be built in anywhere near the way that we see it? We know they'd have to have a bigger recess for the court on their side by 125 feet, which seems like it might become impossible.
That's right. The waiver was already granted, but the renewal of the waiver would allow them to proceed in this direction. And yes, it's a very constrained site, so without it, it would render much of the floor plate undevelopable.
Okay, right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. Okay, so this is a renewal of a special permit, so we can vote on this one now. The Commission believes that the circumstances have not changed, so we're going to do that now. I will seek assent by a voice vote to send an approval letter to the Buildings Department. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, you guys have it. Thank you very much, Amrita. Okay, next up.
For post-hearing follow-ups, first we have 37-59 Hamilton Avenue in Staten Island, which had a hearing at the January 21st public meeting. Amy Obanaga is here to present.
Good afternoon, Chair Grodd.
Hi, Amy.
Hi, and good afternoon, Commissioners. I am here in regards to 3759 Hamilton Avenue rezoning. Just a brief review. Department of City Planning finds the applicant's request for a zoning map amendment from an R6 to an R73 with a C24 overlay zoning district to an R73 C24 zoning districts, a zoning text amendment to MIH options 1 and 2, and the removal of the project area from the Special Hillsides Preservation District and its place within the Upland Subdistrict of the Special St. George District as appropriate. These actions would provide 369 new dwelling units, 111 of which would be permanently income restricted. The proposed density is appropriate for this location, which is within Staten Island's most pedestrian-oriented and least car-dependent neighborhood. In addition, the project site is situated across the street from several multifamily residences, the tallest in the borough included, and is within close proximity to public transit. Currently, the applicant team is working on responses, which will be circulated before the scheduled vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Okay, next.
Next, we have Allen Street Maldi mapping, which was also heard at the January 21st public meeting, and Abraham Abreu is here to present.
All right, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Abraham Abreu, and this is the post-hearing follow-up for Allen Street Maldi mapping. This is a application from the New York City Department of Park and Recreation on the Lower East Side, seeking to eliminate, discontinue, and close a portion of Allen Street between Delancey and Rayton Street, map it as park, and as well a zoning text amendment to preserve the current, the current zoning regulations regarding lots fronting a wide street for properties fronting Allen Street between Delancey and Rayton Street. This project was certified by the Department of City Planning on December 1st, 2025, and the Commission held its public hearing on January 21st of this year. The Community Board voted favorable, 31 in favor, 0 against, and 0 abstaining, and the Borough President also issued a favorable recommendation on this project. The Department of City Planning recommends approval of this application as mapping Allen Street Mall as a park would allow the Parks Department full jurisdiction over the site and ability to have a concession on the mall. We also note that there's going to be no change to vehicular access, transit or bicycle lane facilities, or sidewalk space or the lane configuration proposed as a result of the steam mapping. And then finally, the text amendment would allow street width zoning regulations to stay as is on the block, avoiding potential impacts of new narrow street regulations on several sites on the block. So for those reasons, we recommend a approval and happy to take any last questions.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Lastly, for post-hearing follow-ups at the next review session, we will have presentations on DEP Newtown Creek, CSO Tunnel, and 1727 Amsterdam Avenue Hilltop Apartments.
Terrific. Anything left on our agenda for today, Madam Secretary?
I understand you have an important announcement.
I do, as a matter of fact, have an important announcement. Thank you very much. It was so important that I almost forgot. We are going to combine our February 17 and 18th meetings and review sessions into February 18 at 10 o'clock a.m. Members of the public should check the Department of City Planning calendar page for more information, but for the purposes of commissioner schedules, February 18 at 10 a.m., that will be the time and the only time we will be meeting that week.
Can we vote on this?
We did. I mean, if you want to vote to 2 meetings, I'm prepared to take it under advisement, but I think I have the votes actually to consolidate. So thank you very much, everybody, and thank you for your time and attention today, as always. And with that, we are adjourned.
The time is 3:44.